Chapter 1570. Oh no, Guhan, what's wrong with you? Husband, what's wrong with you? Chidyen held Guhan, who was spurting blood like an out-of-control fire hydrant, and shouted in horror. Xian Yuan's sword reacted immediately and said, "The fragments of consciousness in his body have exploded, and his soul has begun to disintegrate. If we don't find a way to repair his soul, he's dead. He's dead. What will happen to us?" Extinguish Immortal Sword asked subconsciously. "What else can we do?" "Of course, we'll turn back to our original appearance," Zhu Xian said. "No. We can't turn back to our original appearance. Otherwise, we won't be able to escape from Tongtian's hands." "No. Hey, Guhan, you can't die. You can't be so devastated by such a small thing. Aren't you going to save humans? Get up." The Extinguish Immortal Sword shook Ji Yuhan's head forcefully, but other than making Ji Yuhan's blood spurt out more intensely, there was no other use. "Stop, or else Guhan will die from your shaking." Chidyen pushed Extinguish Immortal Sword away. "Ha ha ha, he's going to die like this." Qing Ping also looked at Guhan in disbelief. She couldn't believe that Guhan, who was so powerful that he could even defeat her old master, was going to die just because of her words and the disappearance of a sword lady. "Ha ha ha. This is ridiculous. This is really ridiculous. You really like that little bastard the most. You've never had me in your heart. You're going to die because of that little bastard." Qing Ping looked up at the sky as if she was looking for something hidden in the depths of the starry sky. At the same time, she shouted, "Master, did you see that? Qing Ping has avenged you. Qing Ping has done what you couldn't do. Master, please show up quickly and bring Qing Ping back. So noisy. Kill her." Chidyen, who was in a state of anxiety and despair, shouted angrily when he heard Qing Ping's shout towards the sky. "I'm going to kill that bastard." The celestial extinguishing sword, which had been worrying about being unable to vent its fear, did not say a word. It appeared beside Qing Ping in a flash. Just as it was about to wring her neck, Qing Ping, who had been shouting loudly, closed her eyes and fell stiffly to the ground. In the end, she simply changed back into her sword form. "You can't kill her. She's connected to Guhan's Purple Palace. Without Guhan's protection, if you kill her, Guhan's Purple Palace will be destroyed, and we'll die with him." "I didn't touch her," the Shenyuan sword suddenly shouted when it saw Qing Ping fall down. Zhu Xian raised his hands innocently and said, "I didn't touch her, she fell down before I even touched her." "Forget it. Put her back into the scabbard first. The most important thing now is to save Master." After the celestial extinguishing sword finished speaking, Zhu Xian obediently put Qing Ping back into the scabbard. Qing Ping's matter could be ignored for now, but Guhan's problem had to be solved. At this time, Ji Yuhan's 7 orifices were bleeding much better. But this in itself was not a good thing. On the contrary, it meant that Ji Yuhan's blood pressure was already insufficient. If all his blood flowed out, then Ji Yuhan would really be finished. In this world, other than Ji Yuhan who could reconstruct his body, there was no one else who could be as abnormal as Ji Yuhan. This meant that no one could save Ji Yuhan like how Ji Yuhan saved Lu Shihua. However, in the face of such a critical situation, although Guhan had 12 sword maidens, they were all helpless. They had no idea how to save Guhan. In the end, Chi could only cry as he carried Guhan back into the tent and found Liuyan Ling. "What? Guhan's consciousness has been greatly stimulated to the point that his consciousness is colliding with each other and collapsing. His soul is about to dissipate." Liuyan Ling was shocked to see Chi appear before her with a face full of tears. She immediately rushed to Guhan's side and carefully sent her consciousness into Guhan's mind. As a result, she found that Guhan's soul had reached a rather dangerous level. It was like a candle in the wind, in danger of being extinguished at any time. Something that Tongtian had schemed for 1,000 years to no avail had been easily achieved with a few words from Qing Ping. "Miss Ling, your Liuyan clan is knowledgeable. You must know a way to save Guhan, right?" Chi held Liuyan Ling's hand with anticipation in her eyes. At this moment, the only one who could save Guhan was Liuyan Ling. "How would I know?" Liuyan Ling was also horrified and flustered. She desperately searched her mind for the records about souls in the Lionian clan, but there was no way to repair a soul. What happened? How's Guhan? Song Ifei returned at this moment. You idiot, have you forgotten what happened when we escaped from Spirited Mountain? In the end, Song Ifei's reaction was faster. After listening to Ji Yuhan's desperate situation, Song Ifei immediately remembered the fierce battle that happened a few months ago. What do you mean by escaping from Spirited Mountain? I don't understand what you're talking about at all. Lionian Ling stared at Song Ifei. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot that it wasn't you, it was Lu Shihua. Song Ifei stuck out her tongue and said seriously, it's very easy to save Guhan now. Find a virgin and have sex with him. Guhan's Green Lotus Soul Guide will repair his soul automatically. This is the only chance to save Guhan. Green Lotus Soul Guide? Isn't this the technique in the legendary 3 Swords of Green Lotus? Why does Guhan know this lost technique? Lionian Ling said in surprise. You actually know about the 3 Swords of Green Lotus. Didn't the Prime of Tongtian say that this is his trump card? No one in the world knows about the 3 Swords of Green Lotus. Why does it seem like everyone knows about it now? Song Ifei complained, but she did not have much time to think about this. She immediately put her hands under Lionian Ling's clothes. What are you doing? What do you want to do? Lionian Ling was shocked by Song Ifei's behavior and asked in panic. What do you think I want to do? Of course, I want to save Guhan. Now, besides you, you are the only virgin here. If you don't give yourself to him, who will? Song Ifei said with a pout. At the same time, she quickly took off Lionian Ling's clothes. But it's different from what I imagined. My first time with Guhan should be. Seeing this, Lionian Ling was about to cry. Why are you so long-winded? When I had my first time, I was forced to squeeze in a tent with another woman. Forget it, do you still want to save Guhan? At most, I can catch some girls from outside and save Guhan, Song Ifei said carelessly. Don't even think about it. Those wild women. Forget it, get out of here. Lionian Ling suddenly drove Song Ifei and the other sword ladies out of the tent like crazy, leaving only her and Guhan in the tent. As for what happened next, there was no need to say anything. Anyway, it was something not easy for children to do. As for the others, they waited outside the tent anxiously, which made the sword bearers and humans passing by nervous. Did something happen to His Majesty Hongjun? No way. Guhan still hasn't woken up. After waiting for about 3 or 4 hours, Lionian Ling stuck her head out of the tent and said to Song Ifei with a flushed face. I'll go in and have a look. Without saying anything, Song Ifei rushed into the tent. As the tent swayed, Lionian Ling's snow-white skin could be vaguely seen. Startled, Lionian Ling screamed and closed the tent door tightly. After a few minutes, Song Ifei stuck his head out of the tent. Chijian hurried to ask about Guhan's condition excitedly. Song Ifei shook his head with a bitter smile and said, there is good news and bad news. The good news is that this method is indeed effective. Guhan's collapsing soul has been stabilized, at least for the time being, there will be no danger of it breaking. But the bad news is that if you want to cure the cold, 1 virgin is not enough. You need more virgins. That's easy. Chijian stamped her feet and said, I'll go catch some girls. Guhan lost his life to save them, it's reasonable for them to sacrifice themselves. Wait, don't be impulsive. It's not that simple. Hearing Chijian's words, Song Ifei immediately stopped her and said speechlessly, why are you in such a hurry? Even if you catch all the girls, it won't help. Guhan's soul can't be cured by ordinary girls' virgins. What do you mean? Song Ifei was dazed. Guhan is Jendi. If the soul of a human is compared to water, then Guhan's soul is the sea, and ordinary people's soul is just a stream. If we want to save Guhan, the only way is to send water from the sea. If you take water from the stream, no matter how much water you have, it's impossible to fill up the dry sea. Song Ifei made a very vivid analogy. Speak human language, I don't understand your analogy, Chijian said angrily. Alright, if we want to cure Jendi's soul, only a woman of the same level as Jendi can do it. Song Ifei shrugged and said, just like Lionian Ling, Only a woman of the same level as Liuyan Ling can really cure Guhan's soul. Otherwise, it's useless. Then I'll go find Lu Shihua. Chijian reacted quickly and immediately went to find Lu Shihua. It's too late. Lu Shihua has been taken into Guhan's harem, and she's with me. I feel so wronged thinking about it. Song Yifei said with a wronged expression. Chijian was completely dumbfounded. Putting aside the fact that Chijian did not know that Guhan had slept with other women, if Lu Shihua could not be used, Chijian did not know where to find women for Guhan. There was no other female emperor sword holders in the world for Guhan, let alone a virgin Jendi for Guhan. Chapter 1571. Ahum, in theory, the sword lady and the girl are the same. Song Yifei couldn't help coughing and reminding Qiu Dian. You mean? Chijian paused for a moment, then quickly looked at the Shenyuan sword. Hey, why are you looking at me? Don't tell me you want me to. The Shenyuan sword's expression was as if it was saying, F***CKU. Isn't that great? Celestial exterminating sword rolled its eyes and jumped to Shenyuan sword's side. It bumped Shenyuan sword's shoulder and said, Don't you always watch those Japanese action movies and shamelessly do it with Guhan in my illusion? Haven't you been looking forward to this day? No. Who said that? I. Although the Shenyuan sword was usually full of dirty jokes and had sex with Ji Han more than once in the illusion, he seemed to be very open. When this matter really befell Shenyuan's sword, it decisively began to cower. Oh. So our Miss Shenyuan sword, the most powerful sword lady in the world, is just a guy who can talk but can't do anything. Humph, so this is her real face. Celestial exterminating sword said with disdain and sarcasm. Don't think you can fool me with such a simple provocation, Shenyuan sword snorted. But let me tell you, I'm a woman of my word. It's just a layer of membrane, I don't want it. Without saying a word, Shenyuan sword jumped directly into the tent. There was a rustling sound inside, followed by Song Yifei's screams and Shenyuan sword's cries. Then there was moaning, and in the end, it turned into high-pitched screams. After another hour or two, Song Yifei poked her head out. How is it? Is Guhan better? Chijian asked anxiously. It's both good news and bad news, Song Yifei said with a pout. The good news is that the sword lady is as useful as the girl and much more effective. The bad news is that one Shenyuan sword is far from enough. You have to find another one. Immortal trapping sword. Chijian did not say anything and immediately set its sights on Guhan's second emperor sword, the celestial entrapment sword. Damn. If it wasn't for Master, I would never have been able to wake up. Just take this as repayment. Unlike the Shenyuan sword's coyness, the celestial trapping sword was quite straightforward and walked straight into the tent. However, everyone could feel that, unlike the Shenyuan sword, the immortal trapping sword did not have much affection for Guhan. Although the Shenyuan sword had been hesitant just now, one could still sense her feelings for Guhan. Otherwise, with the Shenyuan sword's personality, it would have never agreed to such a thing. But the celestial trapping sword was different. When she agreed, there was not much change in her emotions. Perhaps it was as she said, the reason why she was willing to offer herself was to repay Guhan for saving her. Compared to the Shenyuan sword's earth-shattering roar, the celestial trapping sword was very quiet after entering and did not make any sound. If the Shenyuan sword had not suddenly poked its head out of the tent, everyone would not have known that the celestial trapping sword had ended. Don't say anything. Let me guess. Brother is still not enough, right? The Shenyuan sword did not speak, but Duyu, who was at the side, pouted and said. Seeing one woman after another go in to have sex with her brother, Duyu's feelings were extremely complicated. Why, do you want to try it out too? Shenyuan sword blinked his eyes on Duyu and said regretfully, It's a pity that you're Ji Han's biological sister. I don't want Ji Han to kill me in the future. I can't defeat him now. The Shenyuan sword muttered, then looked at the other three swords of the four celestial slaying swords and said, Hey, you three sisters, have another one. F***CK, are you kidding me? We're all immortal sword maidens, not emperor sword maidens. We can't use them, okay? The celestial extinguished sword immediately refused. Come on, everyone knows our background. Although the three of you are nominally immortal sword maidens and spiritual sword maidens, your background is the same as the celestial trapping sword. Alright, Guhan's life is more important. Do you want to return to the hands of the Grandmaster of Heaven in the future? You might as well just break yourself now. The Shenyuan sword smacked its lips and said, I'll go. The celestial slaying sword was indeed the eldest sister of the 4 celestial slaying swords. After seeing that the mission had fallen on it, it chose to go into the tent. The celestial extinguished sword, who had been making a lot of noise, obediently shut its mouth and did not say a word. There was no need to guess what happened next. After the celestial slaying sword offered itself, it was still unable to satisfy Guhan's needs. As a result, the celestial culling sword could only go in as a replacement. However, this was still not enough. In the end, the heavy responsibility fell on the celestial extinguished sword. I'm not going. I won't go even if you beat me to death. I don't want to. Unexpectedly, when it was the celestial extinguished sword's turn, the sword maiden who was usually the most active actually began to retreat uncontrollably. At the same time, it looked around cunningly, as if it was ready to escape at any time. However, the celestial slaying sword understood its own sister very well. Together with the celestial trapping sword, it blocked the celestial extinguished sword's path of retreat and pushed it directly into the tent. Don't press down. I'm afraid of pain. I heard that this is very painful. I'm afraid of pain. The celestial extinguished sword let out a final howl before entering the tent. Not long after, everyone heard the celestial extinguished sword's painful howl from inside the tent. However, this kind of howl did not last for too long before it turned into a buzzing sound like a mosquito. Towards the end, the celestial extinguished sword did not even bother to hide it and directly began to howl in delight. Its howl was not inferior to the Shenyuan swords from before. They were indeed a pair of unparalleled living treasures. Yi Tian, what do you think we should do if the celestial extinguished sword still doesn't have enough? Chidian rubbed its head and asked Yi Tian while listening to the celestial extinguished sword's presumptuous howl inside the tent. You're not going to push me into the fire pit too, are you? Yi Tian looked at Chidian vigilantly. I'm different from those perverted women. I'm just an ordinary sword mistress, a standard sword mistress at the level of a treasured sword. Don't count on me. Me too, don't look at me. My relationship with Guhan isn't that deep. I'm a good girl who cares about her chastity. The victorious sword immediately expressed its attitude towards Chidian. F***ck, what happened to the promised harem novel? I'll go. I'll go. I want to save my brother. Duyu jumped up with all her might and raised her little hand high, indicating that she was willing to sacrifice her bones for her brother. However, Chidian completely ignored Duyu's existence, causing Duyu to pout in anger. I'll go. Shishui, who had been silent all this while, suddenly said faintly. This also shocked the other sword mistresses as they looked at Shishui dumbly. Shishui, you don't have to. What do you think of Guhan? Chidian said hesitantly. Shishui was probably the sword mistress who had the worst relationship with Guhan. It was as if Chidian had never thought about Duyu or Shishui. Unexpectedly, Shishui jumped out on her own. It was my mistake back then. If I had worked harder back then and snatched the Qingpin sword from his hands, this wouldn't have happened today. Therefore, the main culprit is all on me. It's time for me to pay for my mistake back then, Shishui said faintly, causing the other sword mistresses to be speechless. One more. Song Ifei's voice came from the tent as expected. Shishui did not wait for the others to say anything and rushed into the tent first. Her speed was so fast that even Song Ifei was shocked. However, her work speed was even faster. Only 3 minutes later, Song Ifei poked his head out of the tent with a surprised expression and called for the next person. At the same time, Shishui, who had put on her clothes again, walked out of the tent calmly. However, from her slightly staggering steps, one could tell that Shishui was just forcefully supporting her body. I'll do it. Duyu saw the opportunity and was about to rush into the tent. However, Yi Tian quickly grabbed his neck and threw Duyu into Chidian's arms. Yi Tian said coolly, I'm going to replenish some milk. Then, she walked into the tent. Oh my god, there are only 2 left. Following Yi Tian's sacrifice, only Juzi and Victory Sword did not move outside the tent. Victory Sword did not have much of a relationship with Guhan and always had an indifferent expression on his face. As for Juzi, other than Guhan, no one else could order her around. If it was still not enough, Chidian did not know where to find more people. However, no matter how unwilling he was, Song Yifei poked his head out of the tent again. One more. It would be great if he could have another one this time. I guarantee that your man will come back alive and kicking after one more. Song Yifei raised a finger and said, "What do you mean by my man? I don't even know how many women he's been with." Chidian sighed and looked at Juzi and Victory Sword. Just as it was about to persuade one of them to enter, Song Yifei immediately said, "These two won't do. Guhan needs one last breath of essence. A normal sword mistress won't be able to fill this last breath of essence. We need a sword mistress who is on the same level as Zhu Xian and the others. Otherwise, it'll be useless no matter how many come." F***CK. That's easy for you to say. Where am I going to find another Emperor sword mistress? Almost all of Guhan's sword mistresses have entered. Where am I going to find a new one for you? Chidian was about to cry. Everyone could imagine how much pain and grievance it had to send one woman after another to its man. However, even if Chidian wanted to send another woman in, it would not be able to find a suitable one. No. Isn't there another one here? Shen Yuan's sword walked out of the tent and said calmly with the Qingping sword in his hand. Chapter 1572. Will it work if I use her? Qi Jianjian looked at the Qingping sword in Shen Yuan's sword's hand and asked doubtfully. After all, it was this woman who had almost killed her man. Apart from her, no one else can use it. Shen Yuan's sword said with a smile, "Don't worry. With the few of us watching from inside, Qingping won't be able to do anything. Besides, she was the one who caused Guhan so much trouble. Now it's time for her to pay the debt." With that, Shen Yuan's sword walked into the tent with the Qingping sword. Seeing the Qingping sword enter, the four fairy-slaying swords nodded at the same time. Then, they each held a part of the Qingping sword's body and injected their power into it at the same time. Under the pressure of the four fairy-slaying swords' power, the Qingping sword could not maintain its sword form and could only change back to its sword maiden form in a sorry state. "I know what you want to do, and I know I can't persuade you. There's no need for you to force me. I'll go up myself." To the surprise of the sword maidens, the Qingping sword, who had been saying how much she hated Ji Yuhan, had actually taken off her clothes on its own and stood on Ji Yuhan, who was lying on the bed. The Qingping sword had said that it hated Ji Yuhan so much that it thought they would have to do it directly and forcibly copulate with him. "Don't regret it if I sit on him." Qingping glanced at the four fairy-slaying swords. Although her words sounded a little creepy, they thought that Qingping might be bluffing, so the four fairy-slaying swords did not stop her in the end. Seeing that no one was stopping her, Qingping sneered one last time, then sat down on Ji Yuhan's body, and the two of them became one. "TSK. Aren't you taking the initiative? It doesn't look like we're forcing you," Shen Yuan's sword muttered. However, Guhan's body underwent a drastic change at this moment. His originally calm muscles were stretched to the extreme at this moment. Blue veins bulged under his skin. At the same time, he let out a series of crazy and barbaric screams. He looked like a patient who was having a mental episode. "What's wrong? Guhan, what's wrong with you?" The sword maidens were shocked by Guhan's reaction. One had to know that Guhan's previous treatments had been smooth and steady. It had never been this terrifying before. What happened to Guhan? How could it become like this? Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Guhan, you will start from me. You will also die by my hands. Qingping cried out loudly, and then her eyes rolled upwards. Her entire body seemed to have lost its soul, and she became a wooden puppet. But even though she had become a wooden puppet, Qingping still sat ramrod straight on top of Guhan's body. "Oh no, I remember now. This Qingping is not a virgin at all. I actually forgot about this matter." It was also at this moment that Yi Tian suddenly slapped his exposed white thigh and said in an extremely annoyed tone, "What did you say?" "Say it again." Including Chidian, who charged into the tent when they heard Guhan's shrill cries, All of them were completely stunned when they heard Yi Tian's words. Qing Ping is actually not a virgin. How could this be possible? Could it be that Qing Ping made her sword wielder a cuckold? Most importantly, Qing Ping was actually Qing Pin. If Qing Pin wasn't a virgin, then didn't that mean that Guhan's favorite sword maiden, Qing Pin, had actually made Guhan a cuckold? No. I should say this. It happened a long time ago, and only Duyu and I know about it. Yi Tian sighed and told them about the past that she'd almost completely forgotten. Where am I? Why do I feel like I've been here before? At this moment, Guhan, who'd completely lost consciousness due to the collapse of his soul, finally opened his eyes again. At the same time, he'd also regained his consciousness, and then found himself in a colorful glass world. That's right. I remember now. This is the Sea of Consciousness, the world of the soul. I've entered that world in the illusion before, and it was also when I faced the Qing Ping sword. Could it be that Qing Ping broke my soul again? Guhan immediately recalled that he'd been immersed in such a sea of consciousness for a very long time when he was in the illusion of the celestial extinguished sword. No, this isn't my sea of consciousness. At first, Guhan thought that he was trapped in his own sea of consciousness like before, but as his senses of this world deepened, Guhan immediately understood that this wasn't his sea of consciousness at all, but the sea of consciousness of another soul. Then whose world is this? Just as Guhan was wondering whose sea of consciousness he was in, a white feather-like thing floated in front of Guhan. Guhan subconsciously grabbed it, and a memory invaded Guhan's mind in an instant. It was a grey world. There was no sky or land in the entire world, only a sea that looked like an ocean. However, it wasn't actually made up of seawater, but a world made up of a strange gaseous liquid. In this extremely strange world, there was a giant that occupied almost 3/4 of the world, curled up like a baby in the seawater that wasn't seawater. The remaining 3/4 of the sea's surface was filled with all sorts of things. There were living creatures that looked like humans, as well as monsters with various animal characteristics. In addition, there were all sorts of strange things such as fans, pagodas, swords, gourds, trees, and so on, floating on the sea's surface. Through the reflection of the seawater that wasn't seawater, Guhan clearly saw the image of a lotus flower. It turned out that Guhan was a lotus flower at this time. When Guhan saw this, his entire memory disappeared, and Guhan returned to that sea of consciousness. Could it be the world before Pangu created the world? After digesting this piece of memory, Ji Yuhan immediately realized that the world he saw through his memory should be a world of chaos, without the world created by Pan Ji Yu. The huge giant curled up in the world was naturally Pangu, who was still in gestation, and the various strange creatures floating in it should be the legendary 88 innate gods and demons. In fact, whether it was Hongjun, Nua, or Fushi, they were actually one of the 88 innate gods and demons. However, except for a few innate gods and demons, most of the innate gods and demons died in the battle when the world was just created. There were not many innate gods and demons that survived, less than 10. As for the things other than innate gods and demons, they should be innate treasures. According to the memory in the sage relics, innate treasures were born together with Pangu. As for innate spiritual treasures, they were appendages that were born together with Pangu when the world was created. They were not on the same level as innate treasures. It seems that this memory is Qing Ping's memory, and Qing Ping should be that lotus. Guhan finally figured out the ins and outs of this memory. At the same time, another goose feather representing the memory floated to Guhan, and Guhan entered the next memory of Qing Ping. In this memory, the world was still in the chaos, and Pangu was still in a deep sleep. Just when Guhan thought that this was a repeat of the memory, a crack suddenly opened in the primordial world, and a figure in blue entered the chaotic world through this crack. Last night, I thought hard and didn't expect to find such an interesting thing. I'll create it first to test the waters and see if I can get the favor of the higher-ups, and see what the creation of this world is like. The figure in blue said with a grin, looking quite indifferent and playful, as if creating a world was just a joke. Then, this figure took out a pen from his pocket and directly threw it into the chaotic world. As this pen entered, the originally silent world began to boil violently at this moment, like a pot of boiling water. Pangu, who had not been breathing, also began to breathe rhythmically at this moment. All right, leave a mark, and this will be the world I rule. In the end, the blue figure used his finger to write some sort of symbol in the air and left it in this world. After the symbol was finished, the blue figure suddenly glanced at Ji Yuhan's position. Although the other party did not make any obvious movements, with just a glance, Ji Yuhan could sense in horror that the other party seemed to know of his existence. Heavens, this was not Guhan traveling to the past, but Guhan absorbing Qing Ping's memories. This was something in the memories, so how did that man see him? What shocked Guhan even more was what happened next. After this memory disappeared, Guhan immediately began to copy the blue-clothed man's actions and began to write the symbol he left in this world. After he finished writing the symbol, Guhan's eyes immediately widened. This symbol was actually the emblem of the Liu Nian clan. This was the unique symbol of the Liu Nian clan. This man is actually related to the Liu Nian clan. Is he the Kunzu fleeting calendar? This was Guhan's guess at first, but he quickly denied it. Guhan had seen the fleeting calendar several times, and this was not the temperament of the fleeting calendar at all. That man felt more like an ordinary person filled with laziness. His true temperament was not even a millionth of the fleeting calendar's temperament. In the following time, Guhan saw many more of Qing Ping's memories, including how Pangu split the heavens and earth, and how the lotus was taken away by a primordial fiend god after the creation of the heavens and earth. Only the 2 lotus leaves of the lotus were left behind. In the end, these 2 lotus leaves were picked up by an elegant man. In the end, the 2 lotus leaves turned into a cyan longsword in the man's hand. This man was naturally the sect leader of Tongtian, and the cyan longsword was the Qingping sword. There were many more memories after that. They were the memories of Qingping sword and sect leader Tongtian, the memory of sect leader Tongtian being imprisoned by Hong Jun, the memory of sect leader Tongtian killing sect leader Tongtian, the memory of sect leader Tongtian fighting against her senior and junior brothers, and finally the memory of her accepting sect leader Tongtian's order and spending time with the flowing sword ancestor. Fleeting calendar, return my father to me. When Guhan saw this memory, he could not help but burst into tears. This was the Qingping sword's memory, but it was also the fleeting calendar's memory. The person who wanted to kill the fleeting calendar the moment they met was none other than his precious daughter, Jiyu Xuanwu, who had been separated from him for over 1,000 years. Guhan finally saw his biological daughter again. However, Guhan did not expect to see his daughter in this way. Chapter 1573. As this was the memory of the Qingping sword, Guhan could only view it from an awkward angle. After all, the Qingping sword was placed on fleeting calendar's waist, so Guhan could only view it from a 45-degree angle. The moment Jiyu Xuanwu appeared was when fleeting year calendar had barely managed to crawl out of the rubble of his house with the Qingping sword. He was about to go to the museum to save his mother when Jiyu Xuanwu descended from the sky and pressed his sword against fleeting year calendar's neck, implying that he was going to kill him for revenge. Fleeting time was helpless. He had no idea how he had offended the beautiful girl, causing her to be separated from her father. As a shut-in, fleeting time rarely stepped out of his house. How could he do such a thing? Fleeting time was a man who rarely went out of his house, so there was no way he would do such a thing. On the other hand, Jiyu Xuanwu was determined to kill fleeting year calendar for revenge. Helpless, the Qingping sword could only take the initiative to transform into a sword lady to block Jiyu Xuanwu. At the time, Jiyu Xuanwu was only a famed sword-rank swordsman. Although the Qingping sword was only an ancient sword, its swordsmanship came from the Jie sect's direct line of swordsmanship. Jiyu Xuanwu was not a match for the Qingping sword at all, and was quickly defeated by it. Although fleeting calendar felt very sorry for the girl who suddenly jumped out to kill him, he quickly forgot about it and rushed to Hubei Province's museum, hoping to save his mother. However, fleeting calendar arrived too late. The museum was already destroyed, and fleeting calendar's mother had become food for Steel Tooth. Seeing fleeting calendar appear, Steel Tooth naturally targeted fleeting calendar. Unfortunately, the Qingping sword was unable to help fleeting calendar because it had already used the Jie school's swordsmanship once. Fleeting calendar, who did not know any swordsmanship, was no match for Steel Tooth, and was about to die at Steel Tooth's hands. In his panic, Fleeting Time Calendar touched Yu King Gojianjian, whose glass barrier had been shattered. He successfully synchronized with Yu King Gojianjian, and then Yu King Gojianjian jumped out and used his powerful sword skills to kill Steel Tooth and save Fleeting Time Calendar's life. In the following few days, Fleeting Calendar lived like a zombie due to his mother's death. He relied on the Yu King Gojian to fight on his own to survive Yuan Ku's attacks. One day, when Fleeting Time Calendar was passing by a ruin, he unexpectedly met Jiyu Xuanwu, who had once tried to kill him. However, Jiyu Xuanwu was not in a good condition at that time. She was surrounded by 4 nether-rank bandits and was about to die. Fleeting Time Calendar disregarded the past and volunteered to fight alongside Jiyu Xuanwu. However, this was still not enough to defeat the 4 Nether Realm Yuan Ku. In the end, Jiyu Xuanwu had no choice but to teach Fleeting Calendar swordsmanship, so that Fleeting Calendar could fight with the Qingping sword while Yu King Gojian fought. Fleeting Time lived up to his name as the sword ancestor of the generation. Jiyu Xuanwu had only taught him a little, but Fleeting Time was able to comprehend many basic swordsmanship techniques. He even created a few unique moves. Finally, after a bloody battle, the two of them successfully killed the 4 Nether-class bandits. Because Fleeting Calendar had saved his life, Jiyu Xuanwu could no longer kill Fleeting Calendar. At the same time, in order to repay him, Jiyu Xuanwu told Fleeting Calendar many basic settings of the Sword Lady and the Sword Wielder. This allowed Fleeting Calendar to understand the relationship between the Sword Lady and the Sword Wielder, allowing him to use the Sword Lady perfectly. From then on, Jiyu Xuanwu did not want to have any contact with Fleeting Calendar. In the end, he parted ways with Fleeting Calendar. However, through this fierce battle, Fleeting Calendar was able to walk out of the shadow of his mother's death. He swore to his mother's spirit in heaven that he would one day kill all of the Yuan Ku and return peace to the human race. For a long period of time, Jiyu Black Tortoise's memories did not appear. Fleeting Time Calendar then established a survivors' camp in Wuhan City and found some of his fellow swordbearers. After a series of adventures, he brought these survivors to Yangjing City. At the same time, Fleeting Time Calendar once again met Jiyu Black Tortoise in Yangjing City. This time, Jiyu Xuanwu opened her heart to the Fleeting Calendar and told him that she came from the future. She was kicked into the past by the Fleeting Calendar from the future, and was separated from her father. As for what happened in the future, as well as Fleeting Calendar's identity as Kunzu, Jiyu Xuanwu did not tell Fleeting Calendar about it. Jiyu Xuanwu's words made Fleeting Calendar feel guilty. Although Fleeting Calendar did not know why he would do such a thing in the future, Fleeting Calendar expressed that he was willing to use the rest of his life to make it up to Jiyu Xuanwu. He said that he would do his best to help Jiyu Xuanwu find Shizaki Kueizo, who came to this world with her, and then let Shizaki Kueizo send Jiyu Xuanwu back to the future. And so, the following days were filled with stories of Fleeting Calendar and Jiyu Xuanwu fighting side by side and protecting the old Yangjing City. During this adventure, the Fleeting Calendar and the Jiyu Black Tortoise had formed a deep friendship. Jiyu Han could clearly feel the love between the Fleeting Calendar and the Jiyu Black Tortoise from his memories, but it was gradually becoming more and more passionate. To Jiyu Han, seeing his own daughter in love was an indescribable feeling. He actually felt some blessings, but at the same time, he couldn't help but feel a little sour. What made Jiyu Han even more jealous was that Jiyu Xuanwu had taught Fleeting Year Calendar everything he knew about the 9 swords of mysterious heaven and the chaos sword art to Fleeting Year Calendar when he almost died because of his swordsmanship. As a result, Fleeting Year Calendar's swordsmanship gradually entered a whole new realm. During this adventure, Ying Zheng appeared for the first time. Fleeting Calendar and Jiyu Xuanwu rescued Ying Zheng, who had just reached adulthood and had yet to fully recover his strength, from the hands of a group of Yuan bandits. At that time, although Ying Zheng had revealed the cunning and treacherous characteristic of an emperor, it could be seen that Ying Zheng was still a good person. After a series of adventures, he took the initiative to reveal his identity to Fleeting Calendar and Jiyu Xuanwu. After a narrow escape from death, the 3 of them swore an oath of brotherhood in the Peach Garden and became sworn brothers and sisters that would never leave each other's side. After that, the old city of Yangjing was besieged by Yuan bandits' army. Fleeting Year Calendar and Jiyu Xuanwu fought with their lives on the line, while Yingjing used his unique strategic vision as an emperor and commanded the battle from the shadows. At that time, the strongest person was not Fleeting Calendar, but Jiyu Xuanwu. This was because Jiyu Xuanwu's talent in swordsmanship was not inferior to Fleeting Calendar's. After studying Guhan's swordsmanship, Jiyu Xuanwu's swordsmanship reached 1/4 of Guhan's current level. I mean 1/4 of Guhan's swordsmanship when he was at his peak. Therefore, at that time, the old Yangjing city formed a situation where the Black Tortoise outshone others and suppressed all the heroes. Because of his powerful strength and beautiful appearance, Jiyu Xuanwu became the goddess of the entire Yangjing city. She was admired by countless famous swordsmen in history. Of course, Jiyu Xuanwu's heart was always with Fleeting Calendar, and it never wavered. Jiyu Xuanwu was getting stronger and stronger, but the situation on the battlefield did not change. On the contrary, the government officials who were afraid of the power of the swordsman began to have some ideas that they should not have. They decided to create some special equipment to control and suppress the swordsman, so that they would completely obey the government's orders. What was worse was that these officials even secretly captured many swordsmen and sword mistresses. They planned to dissect them to find out the origin of the swordsman's power, and then find a way to copy it into their own bodies. This plan was carried out in secret. Thanks to the heavy casualties on the battlefield, the disappearance of some of the swordsmen did not arouse any suspicion. However, this matter was eventually discovered by Fleeting Calendar. To ensure that this secret was not discovered, the government decided to make Fleeting Calendar disappear as well. They planned to dissect this powerful swordsman in the underground base. However, Fleeting Time Calendar was, after all, a man blessed by the heavens' luck. After Jiyu Xuanwu and Ying Zheng found out the truth, the enraged Jiyu Xuanwu single-handedly killed his way into the base and killed most of the government officials, saving Fleeting Time Calendar from the brink of death. However, with the destruction of the government and the destruction of the upper echelons, Beijing City's defense line was completely destroyed. It could be said that the old Beijing City's defense was largely due to Jiyu Xuanwu. If not for Jiyu Xuanwu's massacre, the old Beijing City would not have fallen so quickly, and Jiyu Xuanwu had offended many swordsmen whose family members had died in the battle. After that, the two of them went through many adventures. Finally, in the fleeting time gap, under the witness of countless swordbearers, they became husband and wife. After that, Jiyu Xuanwu became pregnant with Fleeting Time Calendar's child. And through the Qingping sword's perspective, Guhan saw his own daughter and Fleeting Calendar's sweet life. Originally, Guhan thought that this memory would pass just like that, but at some point, before Guhan and Fleeting Calendar could react, Jiyu Xuanwu suddenly disappeared from the world, and disappeared without a trace. In the memory of the Qingping sword, Fleeting Calendar had been wandering around the world in search of the missing Jiyu Xuanwu. It was during this process that Fleeting Calendar finally found the Empyrean sword and became the first emperor sword in human history. Chapter 1574. One day, just like how Jiyu Xuanwu suddenly disappeared, Jiyu Xuanwu suddenly returned to Fleeting Calendar's side. She was carrying Fleeting Calendar's son in her arms. Fleeting Calendar was overjoyed, but after spending some time with Jiyu Xuanwu, Fleeting Calendar could vaguely sense that Jiyu Xuanwu seemed to have gone through something very exciting. She was no longer the same as before. Not only did the fleeting year calendar feel strange, it also attracted the attention of Jiyu Han, who was a bystander. Even through the memories of the Qingping sword, he could tell that Jiyu Xuanwu was indeed different from before. Just as Guhan was about to carefully observe what would happen next, the Qingping sword's memories suddenly became extremely blurry and unstable. It was as if a powerful external force had interfered with the memories. Guhan could no longer get a complete set of memories. He could only see some fragmented images, like a disk that was being fast-forwarded at 64 times the speed. With such fragmented memories, Guhan could only barely understand a few things. The fleeting year calendar seemed to have discovered some important secrets and began to secretly investigate these secrets. The relationship between the Jiyu Black Tortoise and the fleeting year calendar became more and more entangled. Eventually, the two of them lived in separate rooms and never lived together again. Jiyu Han did not know how long the fragmented memories went on, but the scene in front of him suddenly stabilized. At this moment, he saw a scene that shocked him to the core. At this moment, he was stabbing into a woman's body. And this woman was none other than his beloved daughter, Jiyu Xuanwu. The person holding the sword hilt, other than the fleeting calendar, who else could it be? Later on, fleeting calendar was jealous of Jiyu Xuanwu's fame and strength, so he secretly ambushed her and injured her. She had no choice but to flee for her life. In the end, she hid in a coffin that I prepared for myself for 3 years. Guhan suddenly recalled the story of Jiyu Xuanwu that Ying Zheng had told him. All this while, Guhan had thought that Ying Zheng might not be telling the truth. Kanzu was a kind and benevolent person. He would never do something like that. Ying Zheng was telling the truth. Fleeting calendar had indeed injured Jiyu Xuanwu. However, Guhan did not expect that the sword that pierced into Jiyu Xuanwu's body was his own Qingpin sword. His own Qingpin sword was stained with his daughter's blood. Unexpectedly, Jiyu Xuanwu did not put up any resistance against Fleeting Calendar's attack. Instead, he allowed Fleeting Calendar to stab Qingpin's sword into his body. At the same time, he looked at Fleeting Calendar with a face full of tears. Perhaps it was the tears that moved Fleeting Calendar's heart, but he finally let go of his killing intent towards Jiyu Xuanwu. After pulling out Qingpin's sword, he left without even turning his head back. Just as Guhan was anxiously preparing to see the next memory, Guhan saw a face that seemed to have gone mad. The owner of the face had used Emperor Sword of Firmament to slash at Guhan's body. Guhan let out a blood-curdling scream and was immediately plunged into darkness. Looks like this is what Qingping said about me being discovered by the sword ancestor and being broken into 2. Guhan immediately understood that the story of Fleeting Calendar and Jiyu Xuanwu had come to an end. When Guhan found a new memory, his youthful face had already appeared in the memory. He was in the familiar but no longer in existence sword burial grounds. He was holding himself, and next to him was the young Liuonian Ling, who was lying on the ground, unable to move. Therefore, Guhan began to appreciate his own life from the perspective of Qingpin's sword. He re-witnessed many of the stories and memories of his life. Some of these memories were so vivid that even Guhan himself had almost forgotten them. However, they appeared so vividly in front of Qingpin's sword. This is. When the memory progressed to a dark house, Guhan immediately became excited. Of course, Guhan remembered this house. It was one of the houses in Fort Yuyang. At the same time, it was also the place where Guhan had lost his first time. However, even now, Guhan still didn't know who had taken his first time. He saw himself burning with lust because of the 3 swords of the Green Lotus. His body was in so much pain that it felt like it was about to be burnt. I'll do it. I'll save my brother. The first to jump out was actually Duyu. The little girl had actually stripped herself naked in a few moments and tried to sit on this body. This action gave Guhan a huge fright. If Duyu had really sacrificed herself to save him, then he might have broken his own bones. Fortunately, Duyu didn't succeed in the end. This was because Heavenly Sword had jumped out in time and blocked Duyu. Heavenly Sword usually looked like a somewhat drunken woman, but she still had her own principles when it came to worldly etiquette. Of course, she couldn't just stand by and watch this tragedy unfold between her brother and sister. Don't stop me. If I don't save Big Brother is dead for sure. Duyu shouted as she struggled. When Heavenly Sword saw Duyu struggling like this, she could only smile bitterly and say, "Forget it, I'll do it. It wasn't easy for me to come out, I can't just go back like this. Could it be that my first time was given to Heavenly Sword?" Although Yi Tian was a little hesitant, she still took off all her clothes and was about to sit on him. Ji Yu Han was a little surprised. However, this was something that Ji Yu Han could accept the most. Giving his first time to Yi Tian was definitely more suitable than giving it to the other 2. As for Qingpin, who was Guhan's point of view, he coldly watched all of this. Guhan could feel that the one in control of Qingpin's body wasn't Qingpin, but Qingping. That was why Qingping could look at him so coldly, regardless of whether he was dead or alive. "This is your mission." Suddenly, Guhan heard Tongtian's familiar voice. Then, Guhan felt his entire memory tremble. His sword's point of view, which was originally lying on the ground, instantly flew into the air and became a human's point of view. Go away. Under Tongqian's order, Qingping pushed Heavenly Sword, who was already riding on her, away. Meanwhile, Duyu and Heavenly Sword looked at her vigilantly and asked, "Who are you? Why did you come out of Qingping's body?" Cut. Qingping didn't answer Duyu and Heavenly Sword's order. Instead, she directly used the secret technique of Jeschool, causing Duyu and Heavenly Sword to pass out in an instant. What followed was a scene that was not suitable for children. After that, the restless Guhan finally calmed down. As a warm thing entered Qingping's body, her body began to change violently. Qingping's body actually changed like flowing water, which easily covered the entire floor. On this floor, 2 green lotus leaves, one big and one small, floated quietly on it. A small lotus flower was slowly blooming against the lotus leaf. Is this the true form of Qingping's sword, the lotus leaf? But why? Why is there a lotus flower here? Wasn't that lotus flower taken away by ancestor Hongjun a long time ago? Just as Guhan was feeling a little strange about the appearance of this lotus flower, it suddenly pounced towards Guhan, who was a bystander, and flew directly into Guhan's consciousness. Guhan's vision went black. He actually fainted in Qingping's consciousness. Qingping. Black tortoise. Qingping. Accompanied by his own scream, Guhan suddenly stood up, and saw a ray of warm sunlight shining in from the outside world. Guhan. You're back. Guhan. You scared us to death. At the same time, a soft body instantly pounced into Guhan's embrace. Just from the familiar warmth in his embrace, Guhan knew that there was no one else in his embrace except for Qijian. Brother. Immediately after, Duyu also pounced in with a smile, and then complained, "Brother, these people are so bad, I wanted to sacrifice myself to save you, but I can't." Me too. At least I paid the price in blood. Seeing Duyu, who did not sacrifice anything, also pounced into Guhan's embrace shamelessly, Shenyuan immediately pressed on top of Guhan's body, a little jealous. All right. Can you let me calm down? My mind is a little messy right now." Helplessly, Guhan moved the 3 slightly heavy bodies away from him, and then said to them with a serious expression. Seeing Guhan's expression, the sword maidens obediently shut their mouths, and let Guhan think about it. "You guys. Did you use that method to save me again?" Guhan felt that his soul had become more tenacious and heavy, and that his body was full of red marks, and suddenly felt a little annoyed. "What? After getting such a big bargain, do you still want to wipe your mouth and not admit it?" Extinguish Immortal Sword said snappily. "I'll admit it. How could I possibly not?" Guhan immediately said firmly. What a joke. If Guhan dared to go back on his word at this time, Guhan's own sword ladies would kill him. "That, the last one with me, was it Qingping?" Guhan suddenly asked in a somewhat silent voice. "It's her, but how do you know?" Qijian handed the Qingping sword back to Guhan's hand and said, "We didn't expect that Qingping is actually not a virgin anymore. I thought it would harm you, but I didn't expect it to help you instead. When you woke up, she had already changed back to this appearance, and an." At this point, Qijian suddenly stuttered, as if it didn't dare to finish the rest of the sentence. "And she seems to have turned into a normal sword, no longer has any spirituality or soul, and is no longer a sword maiden, right?" Guhan held the Qingping sword in his hand. His expression was as calm as a piece of cold jade. Chapter 1575. Guhan, I'm sorry. I don't know why I became like this. I'm guilty. I killed Qingping. Qijian suddenly knelt down in front of Guhan and said tearfully. From Qijian's point of view, it was it who killed Qingping. If it hadn't forced Qingping and Guhan to do it, Qingping wouldn't have lost all its spirituality and turned into an ordinary sword. Qingping actually died in its hands. It's okay. Don't be sad. Qingping isn't dead. Guhan gently helped Qijian up from the bed and picked up the Qingping sword that had lost all its spirituality. Under the gaze of all the sword ladies, he gently patted the hilt of the Qingping sword with both hands and said gently, "Get up. Don't sleep anymore. Otherwise, your red braised meat will be eaten by others." "Who ate my red braised meat?" No one is allowed to touch my red braised meat. As soon as Guhan's voice fell, the Qingping sword immediately flew up from Guhan's hand and spun a few times in the air. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a cute thing and burrowed into Guhan's arms. It sniffed hard with its nose and asked coquettishly, "Guhan, where's the red braised meat? Where's my red braised meat?" All the sword ladies were a little stunned. Almost all of them had checked the Qingping sword just now. It had indeed lost its spirituality and became an ordinary sword lady. How did it recover in the blink of an eye? Moreover, it wasn't Qingping who recovered, but the cute little Qingpin who was said to have been completely devoured by Qingping. What exactly happened? Everyone couldn't help but think of Guhan's pat on the Qingping sword. They immediately understood that it was probably because of Guhan. So they immediately looked at Guhan. There's no other reason. I just restored Qingpin's origin, Guhan said lightly. In fact, Qingpin is still my child. The biological kind. What? All the sword ladies' faces fell in unison as they looked at Guhan in disbelief. They did not know how Qingpin had become Guhan's biological daughter while Guhan was unconscious. All right, don't look at me like that. There are some things that I can't say right now. Otherwise, you'll be scared to death after hearing it. TSK. Even Qingpin is your biological daughter. What else can scare us to death? Could it be that you want to tell us that we are also your biological daughters? Extinguish Immortal Sword pouted and said with dissatisfaction. That's enough. You all go out and play. I want to think alone for a while. Guhan didn't want to talk and began to drive them away. The sword ladies also saw the exhaustion on Guhan's face, so they left the tent one after another, leaving Guhan alone. However, they didn't expect that Guhan would be alone for 10 days and 10 nights. During these 10 days and 10 nights, Guhan didn't leave the tent. If it wasn't for Chidian, who was responsible for delivering food to the tent, ensuring that Guhan was still in the tent, everyone would think that Guhan had secretly gone to find Tongtian. On the 10th day, Guhan suddenly gathered all the human representatives and sword-bearers. Then, in front of everyone, he announced a very important decision. Yangjing City is no longer suitable for human survival. We must change to another city now. Guhan said lightly. I have no opinion. I completely agree. Lu Shihua and Liuonian Ling expressed their opinions one after another. Most of the other sword-bearers also agreed. The reason was very simple. After Guhan released the power of the incongruence goddess's self-explosion, the entire Yangjing City was destroyed beyond recognition. The land around Yangjing City was also ruined and no longer suitable for human survival. More importantly, when people saw Yangjing City, they would be reminded of the tens of thousands of sword-bearers who had died in battle. Therefore, it was inevitable for humans to move again. However, they didn't expect that Guhan would decide to move again so quickly. They thought that Guhan would let humans rest in the ruins of Yangjing City for a while before making the decision. I think all of you already know about the rumor about how the apocalypse was formed. Guhan asked lightly. The humans had a helpless and strange expression on their faces. At the same time, they looked at Guhan with great curiosity. After returning, Guhan had secretly asked Song Fei to spread the news about the apocalypse. Therefore, although Guhan had never admitted this rumor openly, it had already spread among all humans. This rumor is true. The source of the apocalypse is sect leader Tongtian, and the source of Yuan Ku is also sect leader Tongtian. Even the catastrophe of humans this time was secretly facilitated by sect leader Tongtian, Guhan said straightforwardly, instantly causing an uproar in the conference room. All right, everyone, please be quiet. I know you all have a lot of questions. In the future, I will write a special report to tell you all the details. However, please listen carefully. The reason I disappeared before the battle was actually because I was entangled by sect leader Tongtian. Sect leader Tongtian and I had a life-and-death duel in the sky not far from Yangjing City. In the end, I was lucky enough to defeat sect leader Tongtian. Finally, I was able to make it back in time. Really? So sect leader Tongtian was defeated. That's great. I thought sect leader Tongtian was unbeatable. Long live His Majesty Hong Jun. Hearing what Guhan said, everyone suddenly became excited. In those rumors, sect leader Tongtian was so powerful that he was unparalleled. He was an existence that surpassed the Emperor Sword level. It was difficult for humans to imagine who could defeat sect leader Tongtian. If sect leader Tongtian personally fought, humans would definitely lose. It was not until they heard Guhan admit that he had defeated sect leader Tongtian that they were relieved. At the same time, their admiration for Guhan increased. Don't be happy too early. Sect leader Tongtian was defeated by me because his old injuries had not healed and he was ambushed by my plan. If both of us were at our peak, I would definitely not be sect leader Tongtian's opponent. Guhan's words made the atmosphere in the hall quiet again. Hearing Guhan admit that he was not sect leader Tongtian's opponent, everyone became very conflicted. However, fortunately, sect leader Tongtian was seriously injured by me this time. I guess he won't be able to recover without 20 to 30 years. In these 20 to 30 years, I will also concentrate on training and strive to break through the last step. For humans, for this world, I will fight sect leader Tongtian for the last time. Before I enter my final closed-door training, I don't want humans to be in an unprotected environment. Even if I lose to sect leader Tongtian in the future, I still hope that humans can rely on a city that they can rely on to survive under sect leader Tongtian's attack. In the end, a new generation of geniuses will be born and the mission that Kanzu and I failed to complete will be able to defeat sect leader Tongtian in the future. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Hearing what Guhan said, everyone bowed deeply. They were touched by Guhan's spirit of sacrificing himself for humans. All right, I need time. Therefore, this new city must be built immediately. We can't waste any more time. Everyone, discuss and decide where to build the new home of humans. Guhan threw a question to everyone. Your Majesty, do we have to find a place to build a new city? In fact, except for Yuzhang City and Yangjing City, the ruins of the other 6 base cities are still there, and most of their functions are still intact. We can totally find one of the 6 base cities to rebuild. Why do we have to build a new city? A swordsman stood up and said, which immediately won the approval of the others. Yes, it was actually much easier to rebuild a base city than to build a new one. If they had to find a new place to build a new city from scratch, God knew how much time and energy they would have to waste. It was not cost-effective at all. We humans have an old saying, without destruction, there can be no construction. After hearing everyone's doubts, Guhan said firmly, although the foundations of the other base cities are still there, it is indeed easier and simpler to restore them. But at the same time, it also limits the framework of the new city. I want to build a new city that will never be attacked by Yuan Ku, not to restore a city that has been attacked countless times. Moreover, if we want to resist the attack of the Prime of Tongtian, we have to design and build from scratch. Don't mention the idea of restoring the original site. I won't agree to it. If it were Liuonian Ling who said this, the others would have argued with Liuonian Ling. However, since it was Guhan who said this, no one objected. Everyone nodded, indicating that they agreed with Guhan's proposal. Guhan's will had been thoroughly implemented in the entire human society. Very well. Then you guys can discuss where to build the new city. After Guhan said this, the human beings were completely in a heated argument. They began to crazily debate about where to build the new city. Some people thought that it should be built near the former Nanjing. It was in a unique location, and it was once one of the former capitals of Huaxia. Huaxia had originally planned to build a 3rd base city in Nanjing. Someone immediately raised an objection. Nanjing was a place with many mountains and rivers. If they wanted to build a huge city, it would require a lot of manpower and material resources. It would be a huge trouble for the poor human beings now. More importantly, the area near Nanjing was one of the most active areas of Yuan Ku. During the construction, there would definitely be heavy casualties. Then, this person suggested that it would be better to build a city in South Asia. The land there was fertile, and there was plenty of sunlight. It was the best choice to build a city. If they did not know that this person's ancestors were from a certain country in South Asia, they would really think that this was a good plan. Chapter 1576. The discussion went on for 4 hours. After 4 hours, everyone's opinions gradually settled on 3 cities. One was Nanjing, one was Taipei, and the last one was Johannesburg. There was no need to mention the reason for choosing Nanjing. The reason for choosing Taipei was very simple. It was because Taipei was on the island of Taiwan. It was an island large enough to accommodate hundreds of millions of people. Humans living on it would not feel overcrowded. More importantly, Crooked Island was surrounded by the sea. In the past, this was a huge disadvantage. It meant that humans had to be restrained by Yuan Ku who belonged to the sea when they traveled. But now it was different. Now Guhan was the Sea King, and the dragons were under Guhan's command. When humans fled everywhere, they crossed the sea countless times. During this period, they received help from the dragons, so the dragons were completely on the side of humans. In this way, humans hiding on Crooked Island did not need to face the threat of Yuan Ku from the mainland. It was a very safe place, and the most suitable for humans to build a new city. As for Johannesburg, it was simply because Johannesburg was on the African continent, and the African continent was vast and rich in resources. Ever since the Great Calamity, humans had never excavated on the African continent, so the resources there must be very rich, enough to supply humanity's future needs. More importantly, the African continent was originally the territory of the Western magical beasts. But with the eradication of a large number of Western demonic beasts, the African continent had been emptied, and it was suitable for humans to move there. These were the 3 final results after the discussion at the meeting. Everyone argued endlessly around this conclusion. It was difficult to eliminate other choices, so in the end, the choice was sent to Guhan. Forget about Nanjing. Ever since it was cut by Liu Bowen, Nanjing has completely lost the possibility of being a capital city. Guhan was the first to eliminate Nanjing from the choice. Those who supported Nanjing immediately turned ashen, while those who supported Taipei and Johannesburg began to feel smug. Taipei can't do it either. Staying on Crooked Island is naturally trapped on the sea. Once we leave the mainland, won't our people become frogs at the bottom of a well in the future? Absolutely not Taipei. Guhan eliminated the second choice. This time, only Johannesburg was left as a choice. This is even more bullsh**t. Africa is such a hot place, it's not a place for humans to stay. Guhan once again eliminated Johannesburg. This time, everyone was dumbfounded. He had been passionately discussing it for 5 hours, but in the end, it was all ruled out by Guhan. What was there to discuss? That's why. Your horizons are still too small. Seeing everyone's dumbfounded expression, Guhan's lips curled into a smile. With a wave of his hands, a map of the world appeared in front of everyone. Then, Guhan's finger quickly drew a rooster-like curve on the map. Your Majesty, what do you mean by that? Do you want us to choose a city within the range of the curve you drew? After seeing the curve drawn by Guhan, a person said thoughtfully. Bullshit. Do you still not understand what I mean? Everything within the range of the curve is our city, Guhan said heroically. Oh my God. When this person heard Guhan's words, he was so shocked that he fell to the ground. Guhan's curve was not the area of a city, but the area of a country. Guhan's finger gently drew, and all of China's land was included. Did Guhan want to build all of China into a city? Have you heard? The higher-ups have decided to build a new base city. On the morning after the end of the meeting, all humans began to discuss yesterday's meeting. I've heard about it for a long time. I wonder where the higher-ups have decided to build the new base city. I think it's better to return to the vicinity of our Yuzhang city. That's indeed a good place. Bullsh**t. I'm talking about building another Yangjing city after filling in the hole in Beijing city. Hey, have you heard? This time, the higher-ups have finally decided to build Huaxia city after the meeting. A person suddenly joined the chatting crowd and said seriously. Huaxia city? Where is this city? Is it possible to build the whole of China into a city? That's not good at boasting. Try another one. The crowd said disdainfully. Whoever lies to you is a puppy. When that person heard this, he immediately felt insulted and immediately raised his voice. The youngest son of my uncle's second brother is the person in charge of the science and technology department. He was in the meeting room at that time. It was Hongjun Jendi who personally decided to build a new city with all of China's land. Are you *king kidding me? Building a city with all of China's land? How long and how high will the city wall be? Your joke is not funny at all. Tell us another joke. Everyone said at the same time. Humph. It's useless if you don't believe it. My uncle's second brother's youngest son didn't believe it at first, but His Majesty's words are the highest order. Just wait and see. Soon, there will be an order. By then, I'm afraid we'll be dead. After saying that, he sighed. Everyone just took it as a joke and continued to discuss where to build the new city. In the end, in the afternoon, some staff wearing armbands immediately came to the temporary tent and began to announce the order. His Majesty has decreed that in order to ensure the eternal peace of the human race, he has decided to build a new super base city, Huaxia City. Everyone should work together and contribute to Huaxia City, all adult men above the age of 16 and under the age of 60. All adult women above the age of 18 and under the age of 55 must join the ranks of the reconstruction team. Currently, there are a total of 763 qualified people in the TD 444658 area. They will be specially assigned to the construction team. Tomorrow morning, report to the big red tent and officially join the construction team. The staff hurriedly pasted the imperial edict on a nearby notice board and ran to other areas to put up notices. It was only then that everyone realized that the Huaxia city that the person had said that morning was actually true. Phut, it's just that the name of the city matches. Even if it's called Huaxia City, it's at most as big as the previous Yangjing city. Can we really build the whole of China into a city? Many people said. Chapter 1577. Time flew. In the blink of an eye, another 20 years had passed. 20 years ago, when Hongjun Jendi announced to everyone in the world that he was going to build a new city on the original land of Huaxia, all human beings did not believe it. They thought that Hongjun Jendi was talking nonsense. It was simply nonsense. But 20 years later, when such a huge city of Huaxia appeared in front of all human beings had nothing to say. Because almost every human being was shocked by Hongjun Jendi's amazing power. 4 human beings 20 years later, even if Hongjun Jendi said that he wanted to build a new city on the moon, they would not have any doubt, because they felt that Hongjun Jendi could definitely do it. Looking at the whole Huaxia city, from the easternmost 3 provinces in the northeast to the westernmost province of Vietnam, from the southernmost island of Taiwan to the northernmost Xinjiang, the soil, which was covered with all kinds of primeval forests and mountains when Yuan Ku was reborn 20 years ago, had all become modern buildings and facilities. Hongjun Jendi did not simply build a city wall to encircle the whole Huaxia city. Instead, he really built high-rise buildings and pavilions on every piece of land in Huaxia. Of course, Hongjun Jendi did not destroy those green mountains and rivers. The green mountains and rivers were still there, but there were all kinds of wild animals and forest paths paved with bluestones. Not even Yuan Ku lived there anymore. Moreover, every mountain, river had a public transportation system, and there were houses on every mountain, river for people to live in. In addition to the mountains, rivers, and forests, all the plains were completely covered by modern facilities. According to incomplete statistics, at this time, there were more than 100,000 buildings over 400 meters high in the whole Huaxia city, more than 1 million buildings that were 100 meters high, and tens of millions of buildings that were less than 100 meters high. The whole Huaxia city had indeed been built into a city where machinery and nature were integrated, and there were no longer villages. The whole urban area of Huaxia was perfect, like a fairyland on earth. It really became a paradise for human beings, completely eliminating the hidden danger of Yuan Ku. This was something that all human beings dared not imagine 20 years ago. As a result, many human beings almost forgot the existence of their mortal enemy, Yuan Ku. Only when they came to the border of Huaxia would they suddenly realize that they were still in the Great Apocalypse, and that Yuan Ku was still covetously watching them. because only at the border of Huaxia could they see the huge city wall that was thousands of meters high and hundreds of meters wide, with a total length of 24,000 kilometers. All of these city walls were made of superalloys, and they were all connected as a whole, protecting the whole area of Huaxia together. Only when they saw these city walls would they realize that they were still in the Great Apocalypse, and that Yuan Ku was still covetously watching them outside the city wall. Such a vast and terrifying city was the only one in human history. From the moment this city was built, human beings understood that the Great Apocalypse era had passed, or that the original Great Apocalypse era had passed, and now it was a brand new era. Although there was no detailed name for this era in the official discourse, the name of the Great Apocalypse era was still used. But on the internet, on forums, and even in the reports of many scholars, the name of the Great Apocalypse era had disappeared. It was replaced by the post-Great Apocalypse era, or the more straightforward Guhan era. Using one's own name to name an era was an unprecedented glory in human history, and Guhan had done it. No human could explain how such a magnificent Huaxia was built. They could only tell their descendants. 20 years ago, when Hongjun Jendi was preparing to build a new Huaxia city, everyone thought that they might be assigned to various borderlands of Huaxia to start digging and building walls. But when the work actually started, they realized that although they still had to dig, they didn't need to go to the borderlands. They only needed to go to the designated mines under the protection of the swordbearers, start digging all kinds of mines, and then send them all into a dimensional pocket. As for who these dimensional pockets were handed over to in the end, people didn't know. But according to some vague rumors, these dimensional pockets all fell into the hands of Hongjun Jendi. The dimensional pockets filled with all kinds of mineral resources became empty dimensional pockets in a few days after they reached Hongjun Jendi's hands, and were all handed over to the mining area. With the disappearance of these mineral resources, large industrial machines suddenly appeared in front of humans. With these industrial machines, it only took humans a short period of 1 year to rebuild the entire lost industrial system. After that, all the mining work was transferred to the hands of machines. Humans didn't need to work so hard to mine. They could either become machine operators or put themselves into jobs that required more intelligence. Of course, although there were many jobs that required intelligence, it was still a little too little for a population of 200 million. But there was no need to worry that humans had nothing to do, because Hongjun Jendi launched a policy to make humans glorious again. He encouraged all humans to work hard and expand the human population from 200 million to 1 billion within 20 years, so that the human population could reach its peak again. Humans achieved this, or should it be said that they exceeded their expectations. 20 years later, humans had a population of 1.5 billion. Under Hongjun Jendi's advocacy, every couple had to have a child almost every year, and some women even became mothers of 15 children. Therefore, even though Huaxia City was so huge, the population had spread to every place in Huaxia City. Of course, most of these people were children. They were the new generation that appeared with the appearance of Guhan. For this generation, humans also had a special term to call them the Renaissance generation. Going back to the topic of the construction of Huaxia City, after the industrial system was built, the work that humans engaged in was constantly mining, and then continuously producing various kinds of alloys through the industrial system. As for where these alloys were used, the answer was the same as before. These alloys were also sent into one-dimensional pocket after another, and these dimensional pockets were also sent to Guhan's hands. Finally, Guhan returned those empty dimensional pockets to the factory. Chapter 1578. With the disappearance of the alloy, tall and mighty city walls began to appear on the edge of Huaxia City. According to the eyewitness reports of some people who risked their lives to sneak into the edge of Huaxia, these city walls were not built by anyone, but like trees, they grew directly out of the ground. These people saw with their own eyes that these city walls grew out of the ground like strong saplings, and then extended along the border of Huaxia like a railway. They did not know how these city walls grew out of the ground, but these city walls undoubtedly became the strongest barrier for humans to defend against Yuan Ku. Later, some people on the internet said that these city walls did not grow out of the ground, but were quickly built by Hongjun Jendi with his own mind and the alloy that had disappeared. Just like the industrial machines and various mechanical equipment that appeared out of thin air, these were all created by Hong Junjendi with his own divine power. Such a statement sounded very absurd and not worth mentioning, but it was spread rapidly in secret. Many people said they believed this rumor, and many people who had seen some things with their own eyes even secretly told these things to their descendants, so that their descendants would never forget Hong Junjendi's magic and contributions for the rest of their lives. All the future of mankind was created by Hong Junjendi. In just 3 years, this huge city wall that surrounded the whole of Huaxia was built quietly. At first, when the city wall was completely built, humans did not believe that the city wall of Huaxia City had been built so quietly. It was not until the official announcement of a grand celebration, a large number of photographs and videos of the city wall, and many people were organized to visit that humans believed that the city wall of Huaxia City had been built. However, even though the city wall had been built, the uneasiness in the hearts of humans was not relieved, and even became more uneasy. Because when the city wall was small, humans could see where the city wall was with their own eyes at home, so they felt at ease. But now, if humans did not drive for thousands of kilometers, they could not see the existence of the city wall at all, so how could they feel safe? More importantly, although the city wall had been built, all the Yuan Ku in Huaxia were still on the land of Huaxia, and they were also protected by the city wall. Every day, there were still some people dying in the hands of Yuan Ku. What was the difference between having a city wall and not having a city wall? Hong Junjendi seemed to understand their thoughts. He announced that he was going to build an army to wipe out all the Yuan Ku in Huaxia City. Yes, Hong Junjendi had announced that he was going to build an army. This was something that countless human emperor sword wielders had fantasized about countless times, but they had never been able to do it. Building an army seemed to be a very simple matter as long as there were enough people. Although there were only 200 million humans left, it was still possible to pull out an army of 10 million. 10 million soldiers were more than enough to wipe out the entire Huaxia. But the problem was, even if they had the people to build an army, where would they find weapons? Especially weapons that could harm Yuan Ku and fight with Yuan Ku. Therefore, Hong Junjendi took out man-made sword ladies. A large number of man-made sword ladies. There were tens of millions of man-made sword ladies. When Hong Junjendi took out so many man-made sword ladies, everyone was shocked. Although artificial sword maidens had been invented a long time ago, and it had been almost 1,000 years since humans had developed mature artificial sword maidens technology, there was still a lot of artificial sword maidens. But the problem was that although humans had mastered the technology to create artificial sword maidens, mass production was still a problem. Humans could only produce about 10,000 sword maidens per year. Since there were only 200,000 sword maidens in total, this number was enough. According to this number, humans had only created 10 million artificial sword ladies in 1,000 years. These 10 million artificial sword ladies were either destroyed in the battles since ancient times or in the final battle in Yangjing City. Only 1 in 1,000 of the artificial sword ladies were left in human hands. How did humans obtain these 10 million artificial sword ladies? Humans did not know the answer, but this did not stop Hong Junjendi from taking out these man-made sword ladies. However, there was a problem that was not solved. No matter how many man-made sword ladies there were, if they could not synchronize with the man-made sword ladies, the man-made sword ladies would be useless. At most, they could only be a sword that could hurt Yuan Ku. However, in the face of Yuan Ku's superior strength, humans would not be able to fight him even if they had man-made sword ladies. In response, Hong Junjendi gave all humans a sword technique called Guhan sword technique for free. As the name suggested, this was a brand new sword technique created by Guhan. This sword technique itself was not profound. In the eyes of swordsmen like Liuyan Ling, it was not worth mentioning. Compared to Guhan's 9 swords of mysterious heaven and chaos sword technique, there was a difference of more than 10 levels. However, this Guhan sword technique was the most suitable sword technique for ordinary humans to practice. This sword technique did not require a high talent in swordsmanship. As long as one practiced hard, one could master it. Any human could practice this sword technique. More importantly, as long as one mastered Guhan sword technique, one could form a whole with other humans who also mastered Guhan sword technique. There was no upper limit to this whole. The number of people would determine the size of the whole. In this whole, the sword elements and strength of all humans were connected. As long as there was a real sword wielder to command and use these sword elements and strength, the collective power would be able to burst out and completely kill all the enemies in front of them. On the other hand, Sword Maiden Online was once again promoted by Hong Jun Sword Emperor and spread among all human groups. Previously, because of the huge change in Sword Maiden Online that caused the death of millions of people, Sword Maiden Online was completely banned. Even when Yangjing City was completely destroyed, Sword Maiden Online was not reopened. However, under Jiyu Han's order, Sword Maiden Online was relaunched. At the same time, the Sword Essence system of Sword Maiden Online was further upgraded and strengthened. All humans could obtain Sword Essence from Sword Maiden Online at 10 times the original speed. In this way, even ordinary people who could not synchronize with the Sword Maiden could use Sword Maiden Online to strengthen their Sword Essence. Just like that, humans began a 3-year soldier training program. 3 years later, a human army consisting of 10 million people who had practiced Guhan swordsmanship appeared. At the same time, a large number of sword elements had been added to Sword Maiden Online. The real sword bearers became the platoon commander, company commander, battalion commander, regiment commander, brigade commander, and even division and corps commander of this army. Of course, the commander-in-chief of the army was still our classmate Guhan. After that, there was a 5-year purge period. During these 5 years, this army had almost turned over every mountain and river in Huaxia. They had either killed all the Yuan Ku hiding in Huaxia or driven them to the border. Then, they were driven to the land outside Huaxia city through the city gate that was opened on the city wall. In such a battle, 2 million people from this army of 10 million people had died. It was extremely tragic. After that, more than half of this army was stationed on the city wall all year round. They were connected to each other through the quantum teleportation circle. Wherever Yuan Ku attempted to invade, they would immediately mobilize all the troops to resist. As for the dimensional wall system, it had completely ceased to exist. Firstly, humans were still unable to build such a huge dimensional wall system. Secondly, Hongjun Jendi had once communicated with some people in private that humans had to go through bloody and fiery battles to maintain their strength. Otherwise, if they really hid in the dimensional wall's protection, humans would lose the strength to continue advancing. The main reason why humans were unable to defeat Yuanko in the past 1,000 years was because ordinary people did not think about improving themselves. They only knew how to throw the responsibility of battle to the sword-bearers. Now that they had passed the responsibility of battle to everyone, only then could humans grow further. However, although the dimensional wall system was gone, Hongjun Jendi had redesigned and created a brand new dimensional repair and reinforcement system. This system was actually a simplified version of the dimensional wall system. It simplified the dimensional wall system's protection ability so that it no longer had the power to resist Yuan Ku's entry. At the same time, it retained the ability to reinforce and repair the dimension so that dimensional rifts would not appear within the system's coverage. Because the system's functions were simplified, such a system could be activated and used with only one Duke-type dimensional crystal stone. This way, humans could create thousands of such systems and reasonably bury them at various points in Huaxia, thus covering the entire territory of Huaxia City and ensuring that Yuan Ku would not be able to appear in Huaxia City's urban area through the dimensional rift. After completing the task of expelling Yuan Ku, the final task was the construction of Huaxia's cities. However, this was no longer something that Guhan needed to worry about. After knowing that Huaxia's land was completely safe, all humans began to take the initiative to bring their families to various places in Huaxia. They rolled up their sleeves, drove all kinds of construction machinery allocated by the government, and began to build their own homes. According to the government's orders, ordinary humans could gather into groups and borrow loans and construction machinery from the government. Then, they would unite to build their own homes. However, each person could only obtain a building area of 100 square meters. Land beyond this building area was not allowed. After all, they still had to leave a lot of land for future generations. Just like that, every human found a piece of land that they wanted, joined the group, and began to build their own homes. As for the government, they had to desperately build roads and infrastructure to connect the entire region of Huaxia. Although it sounded a little unbelievable, this most complicated task actually only took 6 years to complete. In just 6 years, the roads and buildings built by humans had already covered every part of Huaxia. Therefore, when humans fought for their own future and destiny, they could erupt with truly amazing power. Another 20 years. Another 20 years have passed. On the land that originally belonged to Yuzhang City, on a small hill, there was a very inconspicuous antique manor. This manor was said to be inconspicuous because for some rich people, this manor might not even be 1/10 the size of their own manor. However, absolutely no one dared to look down on this manor, because the owner of this manor was none other than the absolute leader who had led mankind's amazing progress in the past 20 years. He was regarded as a godlike existence by all humans. Hongjun Jendi, Guhan's home. Father, dinner is ready. Mother asked me to call you to eat. At this time, a young man of about 20 years old lowered his head and said to a person who looked equally young and looked like he was carved out of the same mold as him, Fan, let your mother and brother and sister eat first. I want to stay quietly for a while. Guhan sighed. Yes, father. Jiyu Fan nodded and looked at his peerless father with an incomparably complicated gaze. Chapter 1579. Brother, I want to eat meat. Put that plate of meat in front of me. A little girl who looked like she was only 3 or 4 years old said to Jiyu Fan in a childish voice. Jiyu Fan patted the little girl's head lovingly, then brought the plate of braised pork that was enough for 4 or 5 adults to the little girl. However, in less than 5 minutes, this big plate of braised pork was completely devoured by the little girl. While wiping her oily mouth with her sleeve, she continued to say to Jiyu Fan, Brother, I want more. I'm not full yet. Your mother said that you can only eat 1 plate of meat for a meal, absolutely not more, or else you will grow fat. Hearing the little girl's request, Jiyu Fan said in distress. No. Ping Ping isn't full yet. Why can Mom eat 10 plates in 1 meal? Ping Ping can only eat 1 plate in 1 meal. Brother, can you go to the kitchen and steal another plate for Ping Ping? Ping Ping likes brother the most. At most, Ping Ping doesn't want brother to read stories to Ping Ping tonight. Ping Ping can sleep alone. The little loli pulled Jiyu Fan's sleeves and begged. Brother, you're the one who's the most. At most, Ping Ping doesn't want brother to read stories to Ping Ping tonight. My brother, you must not agree to her unreasonable request, or else she will pester me to read stories to her at night if she doesn't want you to read stories to her. A girl who looked like she had entered puberty immediately said to Jiyu Fan, then she threatened, Brother, if you dare to give her another plate of meat to eat, I will tell Qingpin's mother about what happened today. Me. Jiyu Yuanyuan, don't think that you are great just because you are Ping Ping's sister. If it wasn't for my mother who only knows how to eat and doesn't pester Dad, why are you a few years older than me? Hearing the girl's words, the little girl suddenly exploded. How many times have I said, don't call me Jiyu Yuanyuan, my name is Jiyu Yuan. I am not round at all, but you stupid little girl, your face is as fat as a bun. Be careful that no one wants you when you grow up. Jiyu Yuan screamed. If no one wants it, then no one wants it. Little Lolita made a face at Jiyu Yuan, then threw herself into Jiyu Fan's arms and said, at worst, I can be Big Brother Jiyu Fan's wife, and Big Brother Jiyu Fan will take Ping Ping as his wife, right? Jiyu Fan's expression didn't change in the slightest when he heard his own sister's words. Because Jiyu Fan didn't know how many times he had heard similar words. His other mothers also liked to tease Jiyu Fan about this matter. Jiyu Fan had long been used to this kind of scene. No. Big Brother Jiyu Fan is mine. Don't even think about it. When Jiyu Yuan heard this, she immediately exploded. She immediately started tearing at Jiyu Ping. At first, Jiyu Fan tried to mediate the situation, but he eventually gave up. He focused on eating and no longer cared about these 2 sisters who were in the middle of the Azura field. My dear sister, why are you 2 fighting again? This is the 3rd time this week. At this time, a young girl who was 2 or 3 years older than Jiyu Yuan walked in. After seeing the two arguing, she said with a headache, "It's not the third time this week, it's the fourth time this week. Sister, you forgot, today is Thursday, not Wednesday." Another young man who came in behind the young girl said. This young man was only 7 or 8 years old, but he looked like the calmest person in the group, second only to Jiyu Fan. It was worth mentioning that these two young men and women both carried long swords on their backs. If one looked closely, they were actually both man-made sword ladies. "Sister Shuang, Brother Feng, how was your practice today?" Seeing that the two siblings had returned, Jiyu Yuan immediately ended her argument with Jiyu Ping and went up to them. "Same old. Ling's mother said that I still haven't mastered the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. She also said that I need at least another 3 years of hard practice to reach father's achievement when he was 12 years old." Jiyu Shuang said with a bitter smile. "I've already gained some insight into the move Chaotic Stars today. Lin's mother said that I can practice the next move in another year." Jiyu Feng also said lightly, "Damn. Brother Feng, you've already started practicing the Chaotic Stars? Damn, it's really infuriating to compare with others. I've been practicing for so long, but I still haven't mastered the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. Brother Feng, you've already started practicing the Chaotic Stars. My God. You're not even 8 years old yet. You're already better than father when he was young. Oh. I heard from Duiyu's mother that father was still working for someone else when he was 8 years old. He hadn't even mastered the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. Brother Feng has indeed surpassed father." Jiyu Ping said as she secretly stuffed red braised pork into her mouth. This red braised pork was actually stolen from the bowl in front of Jiyu Fan. "I can't compare to father." Jiyu Feng shook his head. "I've been practicing swordsmanship since I was 3 years old. But father only really stepped into the door of swordsmanship when he was 10 years old. This chaos swordsmanship was discovered by father from the chaos. This set of swordsmanship is so profound that every time I practice it, I can't help but sigh at father's terrifying understanding of swordsmanship. Only then could he create such a set of swordsmanship." Listening to his sister and brothers talking, Jiyu Fan couldn't help but lower his head. At the same time, he clenched his fists tightly. Obviously, Jiyu Fan was not in a good mood. "Come on, father is not as good as my brother Feng." Jiyu Yuan patted Jiyu Feng's head happily. Then, she looked at the door behind Jiyu Feng and asked curiously, "Where are the mothers? Why aren't they here for dinner yet? And father, why isn't father here yet?" "We're almost done eating," Jiyu Yuan asked in confusion. "Father is at the gazebo looking at the scenery. I called father, but he said he's not eating today." Jiyu Fan replied calmly. "What about the mothers?" Jiyu Yuan asked again. "Today is the 3rd anniversary of grandmother Meiyun's death. At the same time, it's also the day that big sister disappeared. The mothers have gone to the Dao courtyard to pay their respect." Jiyu Fan answered. "Oh, today is such an important day. Why didn't I know?" Jiyu Yuan was shocked. Then, she covered her mouth and moved closer to Jiyu Fan. "Brother, I've rarely heard rumors about big sister since I was young. I only know that such a person exists. Do you think we really have a big sister who is older than us by more than 20 years? I don't know. I've only heard this rumor." Jiyu Fan shook his head. "No way. You grew up with father. Didn't father tell you about big sister?" Jiyu Yuan asked in disbelief. "No, I've asked a few times, but father has never been willing to talk about big sister. My other mothers are also afraid of this matter, so they won't talk about it either. But one thing is for sure, big sister is probably not dead. She's just angry with father. I don't know where she went, so father doesn't want to talk about big sister." Jiyu Fan said. "Sigh. I really want to see what big sister looks like and what kind of personality she has. I'm so curious." Jiyu Yuan pouted. Jiyu Fan put down his bowl and chopsticks and said, "I'm done. You guys eat slowly, I'm going to practice my sword." "Don't. Big brother. Let's continue chatting. It's not like there's any use for you to practice the sword." After Jiyu Yuan said this, Jiyu Fan walked even faster. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared in front of everyone. "You stupid child, how can you say that?" Seeing Jiyu Fan disappear quickly, Jiyu Shuang slapped Jiyu Yuan's head hard. The slap made Jiyu Yuan grimace. "Have you forgotten that our big brother doesn't have any sword essence in his body? Is he destined to be a sword wielder? How can you say such things in front of him?" Jiyu Shuang said with a look of exasperation. After a few minutes, in the huge training field of the Jiyu family, a man was holding a long sword and practicing a set of sword techniques. This man first used the basic sword techniques, then quickly switched to the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. He performed the 9 words proverb of the 9 words proverb of the mysterious heaven 9 swords with incredible fluency. In just a short 3 minutes, he finished practicing the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. After that, the 9 swords of mysterious heaven quickly changed to the chaos sword technique. Chaos splitting heavens, chaos flying immortal, chaos stars, chaos golden lotus, chaos legend, chaos return. He performed the entire chaos sword technique smoothly. However, after he finished practicing the chaos sword technique, the man's strength was clearly exhausted. In the end, he collapsed to the ground, panting heavily. At the same time, he looked at the sky blankly. Why don't I have any sword essence? This man was Jiyu Fan, and at this moment, he was roaring unwillingly from the depths of his heart. Although Jiyu Fan was very familiar with the 9 swords of mysterious heaven and the chaos sword technique, and even had about 30% of his father's standard, anyone with a discerning eye could see that these 2 sword techniques were empty and empty. Although these 2 sets of sword techniques were performed very well, there was nothing in them to support these sword techniques. It was like cement without steel bars. If it was used to build a building, a small wind would probably destroy the entire building. And the steel bars that were used to support the building were none other than the sword essence that the sword wielder relied on to survive. Coincidentally, Jiyu Fan didn't have any sword essence. Why? Jiyu Fan clenched his fists and smashed the remaining soil again and again. Even when some of the sharp objects in the soil scratched his palms, Jiyu Fan didn't feel anything and let his blood soak into the soil. Chapter 1580. Dong, 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 dong. Jiyu Fan, who had unknowingly fallen asleep on the field, opened his eyes in the evening. He was jolted awake by the long chime of the bell, and immediately jumped up from the ground in shock. The bell's ringing. The bell's ringing. At this moment, Jiyu Fan was greatly shocked, because the Jiyu family's bell was not used to tell the time, but was specially used to gather the people of the Jiyu family. Once the bell rang, it meant that something big had happened in the Jiyu family, and in Jiyu Fan's 20 years of life, he had only heard the bell ring twice. The first time the bell rang was 14 years ago. That year, his father, who had been busy outside for 6 years, returned home for the first time. He rang the bell of the newly built Jiyu family manor house. At the same time, he told everyone that he would never leave again. He would stay in the Jiyu family manor house for the rest of his life and would not go out anymore. He would use this time to recuperate and take care of his children. At that time, Jiyu Fan was still a pitiful child who had never seen his father's face. The second time the bell rang was 3 years ago. That year, his grandmother, Wen Maiyun, had passed away, and his father had rung the bell to send Wen Maiyun off. Apart from that, the bell had never been rung again. I wonder what happened today for the bell to be rung again. Could it be that another one of my family has passed away? Thinking of this, Jiyu Fan immediately ran out of the family hall. When Jiyu Fan arrived at the hall, all of the members of the family, including his father's 12 sword maidens, his 12 mothers, his disciple Lu Shihua, his first mother Liunian Ling, and his 4 siblings Jiyu Shuang, Jiyu Yuan, Jiyu Feng, and Jiyu Ping were present. Even his first mother's son, Fleeting Time, was present. This younger brother, who was a year younger than Jiyu Fan, had officially become the head of the Fleeting family. However, Jiyu Fan was not close to his younger brother. This was because his younger brother had been raised in the Fleeting family ever since he was born. He would only meet Jiyu Fan once during the new year. Their relationship was very distant, and Fleeting Time did not seem to care about his older brother at all when he found out that Jiyu Fan did not have the Jian Su. Ji Fan had even heard Fleeting Time say that he wanted to become the strongest in the world, to be able to match his father's strength. At the same time, he would have to become the family leader of both the Ji family and the Liu Nian family, combining the strength of these two families and becoming a supreme existence like his father. Without a doubt, Crazy Fleeting Time was as arrogant as his name suggested. Ji Fan did not like his younger brother. Apart from Fleeting Time, Lu Shihua's younger brother, Lu Yin, was there as well. Lu Yin was Lu Shihua's younger brother in name, but he was actually 10 years younger than Lu Yin. He looked like his father, and even an idiot would know that Lu Yin was his father's son. His father had never denied it, but Lu Shihua refused to admit it. She insisted that Lu Yin was her biological brother. Please, Lu Shihua's parents had passed away for almost 50 years. How could she possibly have a brother who was only 10 years old? Ji Fan felt that the Ji family was in a mess, but it was strangely harmonious. Nothing bad had ever happened in the Ji family, and the siblings were very kind to each other. Even Fleeting Time treated his siblings extremely well, to the point that it was annoying. What's going on today? Father, are we going to gather everyone together? There aren't this many people even during the New Year. Ji Fan thought curiously. Although Lu Yin would usually appear at home, when it was New Year or when the family was reunited, Lu Yin and Lu Shihua would not appear at the Ji family. Instead, they would stay at the Lu family's house and live alone. Ji Fan did not know the reason behind this, but the mothers did not express any doubts about this matter. Clearly, everyone knew the reason behind this. And at that moment, all the members of the Ji family were gathered here. This meant that something big was about to happen. But why was his father, Gu Han, not here at such a crucial time? No one knew where he was. Yo, you're all here. Suddenly, a frivolous and playful voice sounded in the auditorium. Then, a handsome man with a lazy aura walked into the auditorium. Who are you? Why are you here? Seeing this man, Ji Fan immediately jumped out and asked. He was the eldest brother of the second generation of the Ji family, and he knew everything about the Ji family. He knew all the friends of the Ji family like the back of his hand, and he had even met all the influential people in Huaxia City a few times. But Ji Fan could guarantee that this man who had suddenly jumped out of nowhere, you must be Ji Fan. Very good. The man's gaze paused on Ji Fan for a while, and he nodded in satisfaction. This action caused Ji Fan to feel a chill run down his spine, as if something was staring at his back. Who are you? If you don't tell me the truth, don't blame me for taking action. Ji Fan immediately unsheathed his long sword. Even though Ji Fan was only holding an ordinary sword, even though Ji Fan did not have any sword essence in his body, even though Ji Fan's true strength might not even be able to defeat a treasured sword wielder, Ji Fan still jumped out without hesitation. Who are you? Tell me now, or I won't forgive you. Ji Yuan immediately unsheathed her sword when she saw her brother making a move, and the rest of her siblings quickly followed suit. Even Fleeting Time and Lu Yin were no exception. This made Ji Fan feel slightly more at ease. Even if he could not defeat this intruder, his siblings would definitely be able to teach him a lesson. Don't. Everyone was a family. Why did they have to pull out their swords? Look, is any of your mothers willing to fight? Ji Fan noticed that the mothers were unusually calm after hearing the man's words. Despite the complicated look in their eyes, none of them seemed to have any intention of fighting, and allowed the man to stand on the stage. This made Ji Fan feel that something was amiss. All right, we're not enemies, we're relatives. Let me introduce myself. I'm Fleeting Maple, and I'm an old friend of your father's. I'm here to save my parents. The man smiled. Fleeting Maple. You're a member of the Fleeting family? It was Fleeting Time's turn to be stunned when he heard the man's self-introduction. He stared at the man who called himself Fleeting Maple, and tried to recall the genealogy of the Fleeting family. He was certain that there was no such thing as Fleeting Maple in his family's genealogy. Where did you come from? How dare you pretend to be a member of the Fleeting family? You'd better tell me the truth, or don't blame me for being rude. The dignity of the Fleeting family will not be sullied. Fleeting Time said angrily. That's enough. Does anyone with the surname Fleeting have to be a member of the Fleeting family? If my surname is GU, does that mean I'm a member of the GU family? Fleeting Maple rolled his eyes at Fleeting Time, then turned his attention back to GU Fan. Actually, I didn't want to come here, but I have a favor to ask of you. I wonder if you're willing to help me. What is it? GU Fan asked warily. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's just a world that's in chaos, and we need someone to calm it down. However, that world doesn't have the bloodline of our Fleeting Time family. As the saying goes, we should keep the goodies within the family, and the Fleeting Time family and GU Han are on the same side. It just so happens that you have some talent, so I hope that I can send you to that world. Don't worry, you can come back as soon as you've stabilized that world. It's very convenient. Calm the world? Are you talking about those two-dimensional worlds? Didn't Father give a strict order that no human was allowed to enter the dimensional space, let alone enter other dimensional worlds? I can't go against Father's orders. GU Fan shook his head firmly. Your father's orders are only for normal humans. It has no effect on his son. Right, take a look at this. This is a keepsake that your father gave me. Fleeting Maple suddenly passed a ring to GU Fan, causing him to jump in fright. This ring was none other than the jasper ring that his father wore on his finger every day. GU Fan didn't know when this ring had fallen into Fleeting Maple's hands. When did you snatch this from Father's hands? Did you hurt Father? GU Fan immediately said vigilantly. Forget it. No one in this world can hurt your father. Your father gave this to me personally, and asked me to pass it to you. Fleeting Maple suddenly pulled GU Fan's hand and placed the jasper ring on GU Fan's finger. GU Fan felt his head spin, and a dimensional gate opened up in front of him. Through the dimensional gate, GU Fan could see a whole new world on the other side. He could vaguely see that it was a huge and lively world filled with people. GU Fan suddenly felt a strong urge in his heart when he saw the world on the other side of the dimensional gate. This urge seemed to be urging GU Fan to step through the dimensional gate and enter that world. As long as he entered that world, all of GU Fan's worries and all of the tragedies caused by not having the sword element would be reversed in that world, just like his father. Subconsciously, GU Fan took a step forward and prepared to enter that world. Child, don't. Long Xiao Ya, GU Fan's mother, suddenly jumped up from her seat and looked at her son with a face full of tears. Don't go, little Xiao Ya. My husband has already said that this is Fan Er's destiny. Do you want Fan Er to be troubled for the rest of his life? Do you want to live a mediocre life? Do you want to let down Fan Er's natural pure-blooded human bloodline? Do you really think this is good for Fan Er? Chidian, who was sitting next to Long Xiao Ya, suddenly berated her. At this moment, GU Fan finally understood that this was really his father's will. His father was the one who agreed to let him go to the other world, but he was kept in the dark. So Father doesn't want to see me, he doesn't even want me to exist in this world. GU Fan suddenly felt a great sorrow in his heart. He turned around and knelt down in front of Long Xiao Ya. He deeply kowtowed and said, Mother, please don't worry. Your son will definitely be like Father and have great power. I will pacify that world, and I will return to accompany Mother as soon as possible. I will never leave again. After GU Fan kowtowed 3 times, he jumped into the dimensional gate without any hesitation. The dimensional gate then closed. At the same time, Fleeting Maple also disappeared. Silly child. Mother is already 56 years old. How many more years does Mother have to wait for you? Long Xiao Ya cried until her entire body was covered in tears, and she weakly collapsed on the chair. Don't worry, he will come back, but when that time comes, our child will be the hero in his own heart. He will become the hero in the hearts of 1.4 billion people. Unknowingly, GU Han had already appeared in the auditorium. He gently patted Long Xiaoya's shoulder and said. Long Xiaoya threw her head into GU Han's arms and began to cry unbridledly. Father, did you gather all of us here just to send brother GU Fan off? Fleeting Time bowed respectfully to Guhan and asked in a sonorous voice. That's not it. Guhan shook his head, and looked into the distance. "I just want to tell you that I've made the final preparations. It's time for me to meet the mysterious Tao." Liuyan Ling and Lu Shihua's bodies trembled when they heard this. They stared at Guhan in disbelief. "What? Have you found a way to meet the Tao?" "Yes." Guhan nodded, and with a wave of his hand, the 12 sword ladies transformed into swords and flew into Guhan's scabbard, leaving only Lu Shihua and Liuyan Ling in the hall. "I'll leave the humans to the 2 of you. When Yi Fei returns, the 3 of you will work together to protect the humans." "What about you?" Liuyan Ling grabbed Guhan's hand. "As long as the 2 of you are alive, I will be alive." Guhan held Liuyan Ling and Lu Shihua's hands tightly. "If I die one day, don't worry, the 2 of you will be with me very soon. Just wait for me here." Chapter 1581. If Guhan really wanted to defeat sect leader Tongtian, he had to become a sage. Only after becoming a sage could Guhan fight with sect leader Tongtian, who had recovered to his peak. However, if he wanted to become a sage, he had to witness the operation of the Great Way with his own eyes. If he wanted to see the Great Way with his own eyes, he had to go through the Way of Heaven. This was an interlocking cycle. If anything went wrong, the whole plan could not be realized. However, it was also because of this crucial Way of Heaven that Guhan was in a deadlock. The only chance to recreate the Way of Heaven was used by Guhan to save Liuyan Ling. At this time, there was no Zhu Wu for Guhan to replicate this process again. Therefore, Guhan could only think of other ways to create a Way of Heaven. Yes, after Guhan thought about it again and again, only by recreating a Way of Heaven could he finally achieve his goal of seeing the Great Way. But recreating a Way of Heaven. This was something that no one had ever expected. Even Hongjun ancestor did not know how to recreate a Way of Heaven. In the beginning, Guhan was also confused. He did not know how to achieve this goal, which sounded incredible. Even when he fought with sect leader Tongtian, Guhan still had no clue. It was not until Guhan was forced by the human food crisis to try to create a nutrient solution manufacturing machine with fragments of his consciousness that he suddenly got a clue. When he completely created a nutrient solution manufacturing machine, Guhan suddenly had a glimmer of enlightenment. This enlightenment made Guhan unable to grasp the beginning or the end. He only vaguely felt that this was the key to creating the Way of Heaven. Therefore, Guhan simply took the opportunity to create countless nutrient solution manufacturing machines, trying to further grasp that glimmer of enlightenment. Unfortunately, no matter how many nutrient solution manufacturing machines Guhan created, he could never find that glimmer of enlightenment at the beginning. After the incident with Qing Pin, Guhan learned more secrets of the prehistoric times through Qing Ping's memory. He saw the scene of Pangu creating the world with his own eyes. He even saw the scene of Pangu evolving all things and the birth of the Way of Heaven. At this moment, Guhan finally figured out the meaning of that glimmer of enlightenment. If he could create all things like Pangu, he might be able to create a Way of Heaven. It just so happened that the humans were about to build a new base city, so Ji Yuhan made a prompt decision to use the opportunity of building a new Huaxia city to build every single one of the humans' creations. Thus, Guhan went missing for 5 years. During those 5 years, Guhan walked around the borders of Huaxia City, using the alloy that the humans gave him to build the city walls of Huaxia City. At the same time, he collected all the different things that he could find in Huaxia City. Finally, after wandering around Huaxia City, Guhan had collected all the different things that he could find. In the following 10 years, apart from spending time with his wife and the Sword Lady, the only thing that Guhan continued to do was to recreate all the different things that he had collected with his will fragments and place them in his fleeting time manner. Although Guhan's crafting speed was as fast as lightning, it still took Guhan more than 10 years to recreate all the different things in the world. However, what left Guhan in despair was that he still had no idea how to create a Way of Heaven even after he had recreated all the things. It was as if this was telling Guhan that Guhan had been on the wrong path for the past 20 years. It was impossible to recreate the Way of Heaven. That afternoon, when Guhan was about to go to the dining hall for lunch, he suddenly heard his children talking about the Sword Lady. He also saw Ji Yu Fan running to the training ground and realized that he was depressed. At the same time, he asked the heavens why he could not become a sword-bearer. It would be great if I could create an exclusive sword lady for Fan-er. Guhan naturally loved his children, which was why such a thought popped up in his mind. As a result, this thought ran uncontrollably in Guhan's mind. Guhan suddenly realized that he had not actually created everything in the world, because he had never created a sword lady before. Guhan had created sword ladies before, but they were not real sword ladies. They were artificial sword ladies without any life. Only by creating natural sword ladies could Guhan achieve the achievement of creating everything in the world. It wasn't difficult for Ji Han to create an innate sword maiden. After all, Ji Han could already mass-produce artificial sword maidens. Compared to artificial sword maidens, the only thing they lacked was a soul, a real soul, a soul that could give the sword its own unique existence. In fact, Guhan could actually create a framework for a soul. All he needed was a fragment of consciousness and a large amount of soul solution to strengthen the fragment of consciousness. However, the real key was how to give the fragment of consciousness a bit of spirituality. Only by infusing the fragment of spirituality could the soul of the natural sword lady be born. It was only when Fleeting Maple suddenly appeared in front of Guhan and pointed at the jasper ring that Guhan had been wearing all this time that Guhan came to a realization. He infused the jasper ring into the natural sword lady, and as a result, a brand new natural sword lady created by Guhan was born. This unprecedented natural sword lady created by a human was given to Ji Fan by Guhan in the form of a ring. It was the last form of protection for Ji Fan in the new world. As long as the ring was with him, Guhan believed that his child would be able to return safely. The moment this natural sword lady was forged, Ji Han had a complete epiphany. He understood what the so-called heavenly Tao was, and the path to the great Tao was opened just like that. In reality, the heavenly Tao was a lie passed down from the prehistoric era. Or rather, it was a misunderstanding intentionally or unintentionally. The heavenly Tao did not exist in the outside world at all, but in one's heart. This was a mystical spiritual manifestation. Only when one's heart was perfect enough to accommodate all things in the world, and when one could see through everything in the world and build a world in one's heart, the heavenly Tao would be born from one's heart, and then lead one towards the existence of the great Tao. This was something that even the 6 sages like old Lord Taishang could not understand. Although they had become sages, and the heavenly Tao had been born in their hearts, they thought that they had seen the heavenly Tao from the outside world, and would never have guessed that the heavenly Tao existed in the depths of one's heart. Perhaps this is what old Lord Hongjun wanted. He's such a selfish person. After Ji Han understood this point, he could not help but sigh in his heart. At the same time, he felt a bit of disdain towards his predecessor. The reason why Hongjun's sword ancestor did not tell the truth to his disciple was most likely because he wanted to perfect the heavenly Tao by himself, so that he could go one step further and reach a whole new realm, so that his disciple would not overtake him from behind and be one step ahead of him. However, Hongjun never thought that he would die in the hands of his disciple. After Ji Han left the Jiyu clan manor house, he slowly walked forward step by step, almost as if he was taking a stroll. He passed by the surrounding houses, crossed a few rivers, and stepped on a flight of stairs that led up the mountain. Finally, he stood on the highest point of a mountain peak. This mountain was not high, and there were at least a dozen mountains around it that were much higher than this one. However, this did not mean anything to Guhan. In fact, it did not matter whether there was a mountain or not. Guhan just wanted to find a quiet place to sit down quietly, and slowly observe the great Tao. And this mountain happened to be such a place. However, to everyone's surprise, when Ji Han sat down on the ground, his body actually began to slowly stiffen, and a deathly pale color appeared on his body. In the end, he actually turned into a human-shaped stone. This seemed to be a synchronized process with the Sword Maiden, but when he synchronized with the Sword Maiden, he was still a human, just that he was as stiff as a stone. However, at this time, Guhan was clearly a human-shaped stone. After a few days, a pair of mother and daughter walked up the mountain with a flower basket. The daughter happily pointed to a stone statue in the distance and said, "Mom, look, there's a stone statue." Oh. The mother walked up curiously to take a look, and then her face immediately became serious. She solemnly said to her daughter, "So this is the statue of His Majesty the Sword God. Let's quickly kneel down and kowtow to His Majesty the Sword God 3 times. Let His Majesty the Sword God bless you so that you can enter the GU Family Villas No. 1 High School this year. That is one of the best schools in China. You might even be classmates with His Majesty the Sword God's child. Quickly kneel down and kowtow." The child was still ignorant, and was forcibly dragged by her mother to kowtow to the stone statue 3 times. Only then did she leave the mountain in satisfaction. When she left, the mother was still thinking, "Who placed a statue of His Majesty the Sword God on this mountain? I didn't see it last month. Forget it, it's not strange. Even our community is going to build a 20-meter statue of His Majesty the Sword God soon. It's not strange to put one on the mountain." Chapter 1582. Just like that, the statue of the Sword God naturally appeared in the daily lives of the residents living near the mountain peak. The residents also knew that there was a statue of the Sword God on the mountain peak. Out of respect for the Sword God, many people would bring fruits and vegetables for sacrificial offerings to the statue. Some tourists who came to the mountain would also take the initiative to kneel in front of the statue and pray for the blessings of the Sword God. Later on, there was a rumor that a traveler had accidentally lost his footing and fell down the mountain when he was climbing the mountain. In the end, the statue of the Sword God manifested itself and turned into a real person. It leaped from the mountain peak and saved the unlucky tourist's life. Although the story was very convincing, those with discerning eyes knew that it was nothing more than a story that had been passed down. However, this didn't stop the people from cherishing and loving the Sword God even more. Therefore, the people who lived nearby took this opportunity to hold a grand memorial around the statue, which was called the Sword God Ceremony. Every festival, humans would hold a grand ceremony to celebrate the Sword God. They would wear all kinds of gorgeous clothes and parade from the foot of the mountain to the top of the mountain. In the end, they would sing and dance for the statue of the Sword God and solemnly pray for the eternal happiness and health of the Sword God. This kind of Sword God festival lasted for 10 years. When the 11th year of the Sword God festival was about to begin, another pair of mother and daughter came up the mountain with a flower basket in their hands. However, the flower basket was filled with all kinds of food and offerings. The mother carefully and piously placed the food in front of the statue of the Sword God. Then, she said to her daughter earnestly, "My dear, kowtow to the Sword God 3 times. Back then, I was lucky enough to be admitted to Gujia Village's No. 1 high school after kowtowing to the Sword God. That was how I met your father in this high school and gave birth to you. You're about to reach the age of elementary school. Be a good girl and kowtow to the Sword God 3 times. Ask the Sword God to bless you so that you can go to Gujia Village's No. 1 elementary school. Do you understand?" "Okay." The little lowly nodded obediently. At this moment, the mother's expression suddenly changed. She carefully looked around and finally said with a frown, "My dear daughter, stay here and kowtow. I'm going to the toilet. I'll be back soon. Don't run around." "Got it, Mom," the little lowly said with a smile. After watching her mother leave, she obediently followed her mother's instructions and began to obediently close her eyes and kowtow to the statue. As a result, when she kowtowed for the 3rd time, the little lowly, who had her eyes closed, suddenly felt an extremely intense light coming from outside her eyelids. It was so piercing that her tears almost flowed out. Immediately, she felt so uncomfortable that she began to cry loudly. "Little girl, don't cry. I didn't notice that you were still here. I shouldn't get carried away. I shouldn't get carried away. Don't get carried away. Come. This candy is for you. Don't cry." A gentle voice like flowing water sounded in the little lowly's ear. The little lowly raised her head and saw an uncle with a stubble beard and dirty clothes appearing in front of her. At the same time, he put an ordinary-looking candy in her hand. "Mom said that I can't eat candy given by strangers." The little lowly looked at the uncle timidly and said, "It's okay. I promise you that as long as you eat this candy, you can definitely achieve your wish and get into Gujia Village's No. 1 elementary school. The uncle with a stubble beard said shamelessly. But this is Mom's wish, not mine. I don't want to go to Gujar Village's number 1 elementary school. I want to go to Baiju Elementary School. My best friend is studying there. I want to continue to be friends with him, the little loli said in a childish voice. It's the same. After eating this candy, you can still go to Baiju Elementary School, the uncle said with a smile. At this moment, there was a sudden sound of hurried footsteps coming from afar. After the mother hurriedly went to the toilet, she suddenly found a vagabond standing next to her daughter. She immediately ran over and looked at the vagabond with a vigilant face. What do you want? Don't even think about doing anything bad to my daughter. To tell you the truth, my husband is the manager of the GU family. One word from him can make you suffer. Don't worry, I don't have any bad intentions towards this child. I just accidentally hurt her eyes just now. I'm just apologizing to her. The vagabond smiled slightly. He looked extremely sloppy, but when this vagabond smiled, the mother could suddenly feel a warm and strong sunshine radiating from this vagabond. This made the mother, who hadn't been moved for a long time, suddenly feel a ripple in her heart like when she met her husband for the first time in high school. What's wrong with me? How can I have such thoughts about letting my husband down? The mother lowered her head and thought to herself in shame. All right, your daughter just told me that she doesn't want to go to Gujar Village number 1 elementary school. She wants to go to Baiju Elementary School to find her friend. I hope you can fulfill her wish. After all, only children have such simple friendship. The vagabond said gently. How can I do that? Although Baiju Elementary School is also an elementary school founded by a celestial sword tier sword wielder, I heard that the sword wielder left his hometown for Yuan-ku. He even went to a place outside Huaxia City to live. The school he founded has a bad reputation in our community. How can I let my child study there? The mother objected firmly. Oh, it seems that Ku Rokin has found Shosho. Guhan was stunned. He knew that Ku Rokin had never forgotten about his Shosho. He was always looking for her. It seemed like he had found his Shosho. P.S. The hole for Shosho has been buried. I just haven't found a suitable opportunity to fill it. If I fill it now, I'm afraid it'll just be an exaggeration. However, Shosho's ending and story have been hinted at in the novel. I believe many readers have already guessed it. Let's just treat it as an open-ended story. There's something you might not know, the vagabond suddenly said. Actually, Ku Rokin isn't the only one who owns shares in Baiju Elementary School. Guhan owns 50% of the shares too. By the way, the children of the GU family never attend Gujar Village number 1 elementary school. His children go to Baiju Elementary School. Why? How do you know all this? The mother asked dumbly. Because there are too many people like you 14 years ago who wish to be classmates with the children of the GU family. Guhan doesn't like it. He just wants his children to have a normal childhood. The vagabond had a warm and nostalgic smile on his face. The warmth and nostalgia made the mother's heart flutter. She even began to fantasize about doing some intimate things with the vagabond. What the hell am I thinking? The mother slapped her face a few times to wake herself up from her fantasies. When she was about to ask the vagabond again, she suddenly realized that the vagabond had disappeared. Baby, where did that uncle go? The mother asked immediately. Uncle jumped down. He said he was going to protect humans. The child said innocently as he pointed at the cliff in the distance. What? Is he a lunatic who wants to die? The mother was shocked. Oh no, we can't stay here for long. Pack up and leave. Just as the mother was about to pack up her offerings, she was shocked to find that the statue of the sword god that had been there all along had disappeared. Oh my God! Could it be? The mother suddenly remembered the vagabond's face. If she shaved off his messy hair and unkempt beard, he seemed to look very similar to a certain portrait that hung in her house every day. The mother didn't dare to think about it any further. She immediately ran away with her daughter. However, it was worth mentioning that when school reopened, she really did bring her daughter to Baiju Primary School. It was a clean and quiet school, but it seemed to be full of beauty. After discovering that the statue of the sword god was missing, The residents nearby were first shocked, and then they wailed incessantly. This was because the Sword God Festival's reputation had spread far and wide, and the number of tourists who came to visit the Sword God Festival increased year by year. If the important statue of the Sword God was gone, wouldn't their source of income be completely cut off? However, there were always more solutions than problems. Soon, the statue of the Sword God reappeared on the mountain peak. It looked exactly the same as before. At the same time, a craftsman at the foot of the mountain who was famous for his stone carvings was also enjoying a prosperous spring festival. Everything was so perfect. Ticket office of Guanghui Amusement Park, Dandong Community, Lianing District. Adult ticket price is 280 yuan per ticket. Children under 1.4 meters are 100 yuan per ticket. Children under 5 years old are free. At the same time, outside the ticket office of a famous tourist attraction in Dandong Community, Lianing District, thousands of miles away from Yuzhong District, a homeless man dressed in sloppy clothes suddenly appeared outside the ticket office of a famous tourist attraction. The moment the homeless man appeared, he read the notice board at the entrance of the ticket office loudly as if he wanted to show off that he could read. "Comrade, the rescue station is not here. You can go in that direction." The nearby security guard saw him and immediately walked up with a sword. At the same time, it was obvious that he wanted to chase the homeless man away. "Let me go, I'm here for a tour." The homeless man pushed the security guard away with a slap and said calmly at the same time, "You need to buy a ticket for a tour. Do you have money?" The security guard was well trained. Although he was angry because he was pushed away, he still asked calmly, "Here you go." The homeless man took out the personal terminal and took the initiative to scan the scanner. However, to the homeless man's surprise, he did not hear the familiar beep. Instead, there was a strong alarm coming from the scanner. "What's going on? Why did you call the police? Could it be that this kid is a fugitive?" The security guard immediately held his long sword nervously when he heard the alarm and looked at Guhan vigilantly. "No, the version of his personal terminal is too old. It seems to be the version of the personal terminal before the Frozen era. This version of the personal terminal was completely discontinued 10 years ago, so the scanner can't read it." The ticket seller inside replied, "Damn, it seems like this kid has been homeless for more than 10 years. Why didn't you go to the police station to get a new personal terminal? It's not like you're charging for it." Hearing the ticket seller's words, the security guard immediately breathed a sigh of relief and then said to the homeless man with dissatisfaction, "It's so troublesome. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have approved the Guanghui Amusement Park's chargeable tour." The homeless man sighed. He spoke as if he was the one who approved the Guanghui Amusement Park's chargeable tour. "All right, hurry up and leave. If you don't leave, I'll deduct your bonus." The security guard was ready to chase the homeless man away again, but this time, he missed. The homeless man who had been standing there just a moment ago had disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. "This kid runs fast. At least he knows what's good for him," the security guard muttered. There was a void seal here, and even an Emperor sword-level sword wielder could not enter the void. Of course, this vagrant could not possibly be an Emperor sword-level sword wielder no matter what. Chapter 1583. After Huaxia City was built, the problem of the Radiance Amusement Park and the dimensional gap he was in was placed on Guhan's table. Of course, Guhan couldn't allow the 300,000 humans to continue living in the Radiance Amusement Park like zombies. Therefore, Guhan simply brought the humans in the Radiant City back to the normal world. After breathing in normal air and eating normal human food, the intelligence of the humans in the Radiant City clearly began to improve. They were no longer lifeless and had regained the vitality of humans. However, even the uncles in their 40s or 50s became children less than 3 years old the moment they left the Radiant City. They couldn't take care of themselves at all and needed others to take care of them. After a rather arduous period of education, the young Radiance people who could accept the outside world gradually integrated into normal society. As for the Radiance people who couldn't accept it, or those who became old and clumsy even if they accepted it, they would continue to be placed in nursing homes, and the government would be responsible for supporting them until the end. This was also the last thing Guhan could do for Yi Qingping. The problem of the Radiant City was easy to solve, but the problem of the Radiance amusement park wasn't so easy to solve. After all, there were still 200 to 300 yuan ku living in the Radiance amusement park. The problem of these 200 to 300 yuan ku would eventually become a problem that Guhan had to solve. To put it simply, according to the fastest way to solve it, of course, Guhan would arrange for a group of swordbearers to go on a killing spree and kill all the yuan ku. That would naturally be the end of it, and there wouldn't be any other problems. However, Guhan obviously couldn't do that. First of all, the yuan ku in the Radiant City hadn't done anything outrageous. They had originally hidden in the Radiance amusement park because they weren't willing to fight with humans. On the contrary, they had always been protecting the humans in the Radiant City from harm, working hard to ensure their survival. To humans, this was a huge favor. Moreover, whether it was Artoria, Jiyu Xuanwu, or Qian Do Isuzu, they were all closely related to Guhan and the Glory amusement park. Based on these connections, it was impossible for Guhan to kill Yuan Ku in the Glory amusement park. In that case, how about sending the Yuan Ku girls from the Guanghuan amusement park to the Freedom Metropolis and letting them stay with the freemen? This was a very good idea. Guhan had intended to do the same from the beginning, and he had also taken the initiative to contact the mayor of the Free City and obtained his permission to accept this batch of Yuan Ku who had suddenly arrived. However, when he tried to communicate with the Yuan Ku of Guanghui amusement park, he was unanimously rejected. They expressed that they would rather die in Guanghui amusement park than leave this place. Helpless, Guhan could only come to an agreement with these Yuan Ku girls. The dimensional rift where Guanghui amusement park was located was China's land. This was a matter of principle, and there was absolutely no room for negotiation. However, on behalf of China, Guhan authorized these Yuan Ku girls to live in this dimensional rift forever and live according to his previous rules. As long as they didn't harm any humans, humans couldn't harm the Yuan Ku living here for any reason. However, without the permission of humans, these Yuan Ku girls were absolutely not allowed to leave the dimensional rift. Otherwise, if they were discovered, they could be punished at any time. There was no limit to the severity of the punishment, and even death was fine. Just like that, Guanghui amusement park's Yuan Ku girls became the only surviving Yuan Ku girls in China. However, their living range was limited to the dimensional rift. Originally, Guhan's plan was to let these Yuan Ku girls live in the dimensional rift quietly. However, after a few days, these Yuan Ku girls suddenly complained to Guhan that Guhan had taken away all the people from Guanghui amusement park. The entire Guanghui amusement park instantly became deserted and became like a dead place. It no longer had the liveliness of the past, which made them feel very sad and aggrieved. Therefore, these Yuan Ku girls creatively made a request to Guhan. They hoped that Guhan could approve Guanghui amusement park's opening to the public, opening the ticketing system, and allowing humans to enter the amusement park. It had to be said that this was a very bold suggestion. If humans entered Guanghui amusement park and were killed by the Yuan Ku, it would not be a simple matter. However, Guhan finally agreed with a flourish of his pen. The current human society was not a society where the entire zoo was sealed off and overprotected when a tourist was bitten to death by a tiger. Humans in this society had long been indifferent to death. Even if a group of humans died in the amusement park, it would not be a big deal. As long as the tourists were informed of the dangers inside and told not to seek death, if they still did, then they would be dealt with according to the law. Moreover, Guhan was also very interested to know if Yuan Ku could really coexist peacefully with humans. Therefore, Guanghui amusement park's plan to open to the public was approved, and it opened to the public at a price of more than 200 yuan. When Guanghui amusement park was open, Yuan Ku even paid for advertisements on Huaxia City's TV stations to make its presence known. However, in the beginning, due to the fear of Yuan Ku, the number of tourists who entered Guanghui amusement park in the first year was less than 10,000. However, as the 10,000 people gave positive reviews, Guanghui amusement park's popularity gradually increased, and it finally developed into a large-scale amusement park that could accommodate tens of millions of people every year. When Guhan entered the amusement park, he found that it was indeed the case. The Guanghui amusement park, which was still a little shabby in the past, had now undergone a complete change. The entire area of the amusement park had expanded by more than 10 times. The Moon Lake, where a certain ship girl used to live, was also included in the scope of Guanghui Amusement Park. A set of water entertainment facilities had been built, and there were even cruise ships and yachts. It was very lively. At the same time, there were many modern and sci-fi entertainment facilities. At the same time, the entire amusement park was full of tourists. Such a huge amusement park actually gave people a feeling that it was full. However, if one observed carefully, one would find that the popular amusement facilities were almost all newly built in recent years. The Real Foundation of Guanghui Amusement Park, the old amusement park area located at the core of Guanghui Amusement Park, was particularly empty. Apart from 2 or 3 tourists who occasionally got lost and ended up here, Guhan could hardly see any customers along the way. There were not many yuan ku in the old amusement park. Occasionally, only 2 or 3 yuan ku would pass by in a hurry. They did not even look at Guhan. Even when they reached the former core of the amusement park, the huge castle, no one stopped Guhan, allowing Guhan to walk in. Chapter 1584. This is Thousand Do Isuzu's room. This is the room I used to live in. This is the room I used to eat with black tortoise. Guhan looked at the rooms in front of him in a daze. He could not help but recall the scenes from more than 50 years ago. He and Jiyu Xuanwu first came to this mysterious Radiance amusement park, and then confirmed their identity as father and daughter. At the same time, he also thought that Jiyu Xuanwu was his and Artoria's daughter. Now that he saw these scenes, Guhan could not help but feel emotional. Time passed just like that. This should be Black Tortoise's room. Guhan walked to the end of the corridor and looked at a door that had obviously been sealed for a long time. At the same time, he stretched out his right hand and was ready to push the door open. Who are you? This is not a place for tourists. Please go back immediately. Before Guhan could push the door open, he heard 2 very stern voices. He turned around and saw 2 girls in maid costumes, one red and one blue, staring at him with a serious and angry face. What's your name again? Guhan remembered. Weren't these the maid sisters from the Radiance amusement park? He did not expect to meet old friends here. No matter how you know my name, please leave this place immediately. Otherwise, I will call security, the pair of sisters said very sternly. Whatever, you can go call security, Guhan said faintly, and at the same time, he did not hesitate to open the door of Jiyu Xuanwu's room. Stop. This is the ladies' room, you have no right to enter. The pair of maid sisters moved at the same time, condensing a black magic ball in their hands and throwing it directly at Ji Yuhan's body. But what made the pair of sisters extremely surprised was that the 2 black magic balls had clearly smashed into Ji Yuhan's body, but for some reason, the moment they came into contact with his body, they completely melted away, not leaving any fluctuations or ripples, as if they did not exist at all. You too, have you forgotten the contract that humans signed with you? You are not allowed to use any means to harm humans in the Radiance amusement park, or you too will be in court. Looking at the sisters, Guhan blinked and said slightly threateningly, "Humph. If you want to argue with us about the law, then fine. According to the new contract we signed with the Huaxia city government 8 years ago, the Guanghui amusement park's core castle is jointly owned by us and the Jiyu family. Everything here is protected by the human Jiyu family. Your act of destroying the Jiyu family's private property is not restricted by the law. You will be punished according to the Jiyu family's rules." The 2 maids frowned and said, "The 2 of us are the Jiyu family's stewards here. We have the right to enforce the Jiyu family's rules and have the final say. Do you understand? F***CK. That bunch of bastards, before we left, we repeatedly warned them not to get any privileges, but in the end, that bunch of bastards still did it." When Ji Yuhan heard the words of the 2 maidservants, he immediately cursed loudly. His children had really overturned the heavens. They actually dared to come up with something like family rules being greater than the country's laws. His family was probably going to become a terrifying monster in the future. Forget it, I'll deal with those bastards in the future. Guhan shook his head helplessly and directly walked into the Gu Black Tortoise's room. When the two maidservants saw Guhan enter, they knew that their threat just now had no effect. They could only helplessly chase after him. Then, they saw Guhan carefully looking around the room. Why is there so much dust? Have you never cleaned it before? Guhan casually wiped his finger on the table, and as a result, 5 centimeters of dust was scraped off. From this, it could be seen that after he left the Guanghui amusement park, this room had probably not been cleaned by anyone. It's not that we don't want to clean it. It's just that the young mistress specifically told us not to clean it. The two maidservants said in a wronged manner. However, as soon as the words left their mouths, they realized that something was wrong. Why did I say the truth so easily? Why did I answer this man's question? Your young mistress's order? What did your young mistress say? Guhan asked curiously. Young mistress told us that after she left, absolutely no one is allowed to enter this room, not even her heartless father. The maidservants replied, but as soon as the words left their mouths, they became a little scared. Their answer was different from the last time. This time, they were prepared to absolutely not answer, but when the man asked the question, they still couldn't help but say the answer. What exactly happened? It was as if their bodies no longer belonged to them. With just the two of you, can you stop her father? Guhan said disdainfully. Of course, we can't stop that heartless guy. After all, he is already Jendi. But the young mistress said that if her father dared to force his way in, we should tell that heartless thing. She doesn't want that heartless thing to see her things. She doesn't want him to continue to be sad. She hopes that he can forget himself. This is the last wish of the young mistress. She hopes that he can respect the young mistress. The two sisters replied. She really doesn't like her father that much. Guhan smiled bitterly, and then his body shook unconsciously. His expression instantly became extremely strange. Finally, with a twisted expression, he asked the two sisters, "When did your young mistress tell you this?" "On the night when our young mistress disappeared." The two sisters looked at Guhan with some inexplicable confusion. It was that heartless thing that released that Gilgamesh, causing the young mistress to disappear that night. I see. Your young mistress is really amazing. On the night when she disappeared, she actually knew that she was destined to disappear. She even left such a resolute last word to her father, Guhan said as he gently stroked the table beside his hand. The two maidservants also reacted instantly. Right, they didn't think about it at first, but after hearing what Guhan said, they realized that something was wrong. They heard that the young mistress's disappearance was an unexpected accident, but at that time, the young mistress said it with certainty, as if she would definitely disappear. Could it be that the young mistress already knew that she was destined to disappear? Is there anything special in this room? Or is there any mechanism in this room? Guhan suddenly asked the two sisters. I don't think so. The young mistress's room is the same as the other rooms. There shouldn't be any special mechanism. The two maidservants themselves answered somewhat blankly. Is that so? Guhan's sharp gaze swept across, and then a flash of light instantly flashed in his eyes. Both of his hands grabbed forward, and the princess bed in the room was grabbed by Guhan, and then carefully placed in another place in the room. At this moment, under the princess bed, the spotless bottom of the bed appeared in the eyes of the three people. How can the bottom of a bed that no one has entered for decades be so clean? Guhan murmured. It seems that my guess is right, this is the place. Chapter 1585. Are you sure you didn't guess wrong? The twin maids were about to ask, but in the next second, they felt a chill in their heads. Then, they became dizzy and fainted in the blink of an eye. Then, they were thrown out of the castle by Jiyu Han. The next second, Guhan threw a sword aura at the position under the bed. The fragile wooden board was instantly dismembered by the sword aura, revealing a dark hole in front of Guhan. I'm coming. Just as Guhan was about to step into the hole, he thought about it and retracted his foot. At the same time, he walked to the castle's balcony and overlooked the entire Radiance amusement park from the balcony. Looking at the crowded scene, he could not help but feel a little worried. The next second, Guhan disappeared from the room and appeared in a rather luxuriously decorated office with a huge fortune cat. "Who are you?" "This is the general manager's office. You are not allowed to enter without my permission. Get out." The boss-like guy in the office suddenly saw a human with disheveled hair and a dirty face appear in the office. He immediately said angrily and was about to call the security guards. "Troublesome." A flash of light flashed in Guhan's eyes. This boss-like guy was directly thrown into the void by Guhan, and Guhan swaggered to his office chair. "Fortunately, there is a set of computers with medium authority here. Otherwise, it would be difficult for me to do this." Guhan looked at the computer in the office and nodded slightly. Then, he quickly typed on the keyboard and entered a series of extremely complicated symbols. A cute girl's head instantly filled the entire computer screen. "Who is it? Why did you suddenly drag me here? Is there any law? Is there any justice? Is there any protection for intelligent life?" After the girl's head appeared, she immediately muttered in dissatisfaction. "Jinai, it's me," Guhan said faintly, and the girl in the computer was instantly shocked. She shouted, "Guhan, you are here? If it's not me, who else could it be?" Guhan knocked on the table. "Other than me, who else has this string of passwords and can drag you here by force? Maybe you gave it to your wife." Tomono Kakaze muttered. "That's right, this was the core of the previous highest-level AI, Tomono Kakaze. However, following the huge change in Genyang Online, Tomono Kakaze suffered great damage. Later, the remaining fragments were forcibly taken away by Xian. She then disappeared for more than 20 years until Guhan reappeared. Xian only reappeared a few years later with the resurrected Tomono Kakaze. Obviously, the time Xian disappeared was used to resurrect this unlucky Tomono Kakaze. However, Guhan obviously wouldn't allow this kind of situation where the highest-level AI controlled all human lives. Tomono Kakaze also couldn't return to the time where she could instantly control all electronic AI devices. Under Xian and Guhan's discussion, Tomono Kakaze became a life form that could move freely in all networks, or rather, a human living on the network. She had the authority to enter and exit networks that didn't involve major human security devices. She had truly obtained her own freedom. It was said that Xian was preparing to create a body that belonged solely to Tomono Kakaze. This would allow Tomono Kakaze's consciousness to enter the body and become a true human. If that was the case, Tomono Kakaze would obviously be happier. However, Xian hadn't succeeded yet. So, Tomono Kakaze was still living on the network. However, Tomono Kakaze's traces were quite elusive. Unless it was someone like Guhan who had an unusual relationship with Tomono Kakaze, he wouldn't even be able to see the corner of Tomono Kakaze's clothes. "Jiyu Han, I heard that you disappeared for more than 10 years this time. You went to deal with that Tongtian sect leader. Now that you suddenly appeared, did you defeat Tongtian? Humanity is completely safe now," Tomono Kakaze said happily when she saw Guhan appear. "No." Guhan shook his head and said calmly, "In fact, I just found Tongtian's hiding place." "Really? As it turns out, you've been looking for someone for the past 10 years, causing me to rejoice for nothing." Hearing that Jiyu Han did not defeat sect leader Tongtian, Fragrant Breeze Tomono's expression changed. Her fate was now completely tied to the human race. If Jiyu Han could not defeat the Tongtian sect leader, she and the human race would probably perish together. "Alright, you will know the result soon. Now, do me a favor. Enter the management system here and drive all the tourists out," Guhan said. Damn. Could the Grandmaster of Heaven be hiding in this dimensional rift? Tomono Kakaze was shocked by Guhan's words. She looked around nervously and said, "If he's really here, these humans must be evacuated." "But Guhan, you might have forgotten that I'm no longer the highest-level AI Tomono Kakaze. This Guanghui amusement park is protected by intermediate authority. I can't get in. Try licking your thumb," Guhan said suddenly. "What? Tomono Kakaze looked at Guhan in confusion. Then, she stuck out her thumb, put it in her mouth, and licked it. She said inexplicably, "What's wrong?" "Nothing happened." "You're wrong. I'm talking about my toes," Guhan said. "Damn. You pervert. How dare you ask me to lick my toes? I won't do it." Tomono Kakaze blushed when she heard that. She looked like a cute peach. Licking my own toes was too shameful. If you want to continue living such a free and comfortable life, then listen to me. Just lick it. Guhan's words made Tomono Kakaze confused. After hesitating for a long time, she held up her foot obediently and curled it into a ball like a furry dough. Then, she closed her eyes and stuck out her pink tongue to lick the sole of her foot. Then, a light that was not very bright but was very conspicuous instantly lit up between Tomono Kakaze's eyebrows. This is my previous power. The moment the light lit up, Tomono Kakaze instantly understood a lot of things. For example, she could freely shuttle through all the locations and areas of the network like before, and control all the electronic devices connected to the network. But the difference was that Tomono Kakaze had many restrictions on her body in order to prevent her from attacking humans in the end. But now, Tomono Kakaze had no restrictions on her body. If she wanted to, she could even destroy all the electronic devices of the entire human race in an instant. She did not need to worry about any punishment because no one could punish her. Chapter 1586. Attention all visitors. Attention all dear visitors. Due to unknown reasons, the spatial stability of the dimensional gap is fluctuating. The dimensional gap is in danger of collapsing at any time. All visitors, please leave the amusement park immediately. All visitors, please leave the amusement park immediately and return to the real world in an orderly manner under the command of the staff. This announcement was constantly repeated in the Radiance amusement park. When the humans heard it, they immediately rushed to the entrance in panic, afraid that if they were one step slower, they would be swallowed by the collapsing dimensional gap. Of course, it was not that none of the sword-bearers expressed their doubts. They found that the entire dimensional gap did not seem to be fluctuating at all. This was especially so for one of the immortal-level sword-bearers, who had the ability to sense dimensional energy. He felt that the Radiance amusement park was currently more stable than ever. "I'll go look for the manager here to see if there are any other problems." This immortal-level sword-bearer was rather responsible and prepared to look for the manager. However, in the next second, the entire Radiance amusement park began to shake. Countless rainbow-colored fluctuations that were visible to the naked eye flashed across the sky of the Radiance amusement park. More than a dozen cracks that looked like the seams of an egg also appeared in the sky of the dimensional gap, and some colorful smoke surged in from those cracks. It's spatial energy. It's dimensional space energy. This dimensional gap is really about to collapse. This time, the immortal-level sword-bearer no longer had any doubts. He did not intend to look for the manager either. He immediately revealed his identity as an immortal-level sword-bearer and began to control and guide the evacuation of the humans in the amusement park. After seeing this astonishing fluctuation, the Yuan Ku were even more anxious. They simply could not understand why the human management agency in charge of the Radiance amusement park would suddenly announce that the dimensional gap was unstable. They had lived here for nearly 1,000 years, but they had never seen any instability in the dimensional gap. Moreover, unlike humans who could walk away at will, the Yuan Ku were restricted by human law. They could only stay in the dimensional gap and could not leave. If there was really a problem with the dimensional gap, wouldn't it mean that they could only wait for death here? "Hey, what should we do? Are we going to stay here and wait for death too?" The Yuan Ku immediately found the immortal-level sword-bearer responsible for the evacuation. "Sorry. According to the rules, without the approval of the Human Supreme Council, you are not allowed to leave this place." The immortal sword wielder shook his head and said firmly. Although he felt pity for these Yuan Ku, even though these Yuan Ku had lived peacefully with humans for many years. However, the outside world was the human world, the place where all humans lived. Once these Yuan Kus went out, What if they became vicious and killed humans? Therefore, for the sake of humanity, this immortal sword wielder ultimately rejected the offer forcefully. Then let's fight our way out. Hearing this, Yuan Ku and the others did not waste any time and began to gather together, preparing to forcefully attack their way out. Enough. Even if all of you work together, you're still no match for me. Furthermore, there's an army of 1,000 people outside. You can't force your way out, said the immortal sword wielder nonchalantly when he saw the Yuan Ku group up. Meanwhile, the Yuan Ku's group revealed expressions of despair. Could it be that they could only wait for death in the dimensional gap? Stop. Look at what this is. At this moment, a pair of maidservants suddenly rushed over. At the same time, everyone could see that this pair of maidservants was holding a long sword with mountains and rivers carved all over it. Shen Yuan sword. The immortal sword wielder recognized the sword's origin the moment he saw it. There was no other way. The origin of this sword was too shocking, and he could not help but recognize it. That Guhan of yours wants you to let us out. You are not to stop us. The twin maidservants raised the Shen Yuan sword in their hands. However, even though the Shen Yuan sword was in their hands, this immortal sword wielder was still a little hesitant. Who knew if the other party was lying? They are my daughter's family. There's no need to wait for death here. Temporarily arrange for them to live in the dimensional gap and watch over them. We'll talk about it when I return. A voice suddenly exploded in the immortal sword wielder's ears. He was so frightened that he knelt down and kowtowed to the sword respectfully. Then, he said with utmost respect, "This junior greets your majesty. This junior obeys your majesty. Long live your majesty. You're not bad. You know how to abide by the laws of humans at critical times. This is a good thing. I will remember your contribution." Guhan praised him one last time before controlling the Shen Yuan sword to fly back into the void. "Thank you, your majesty. This junior obeys." With Guhan's praise, this immortal sword wielder immediately shouted in joy. He did not insist anymore and quickly arranged for the army to take the Yuan Kus away. This fellow still has a conscience. The maidservants in the crowd snorted and followed the crowd out of the Radiance amusement park. As the last batch of Yuan Kus left, the dimensional gap was empty except for Guhan, who was in the manager's office. "When did you set up this trap on me? To actually make it so shameful, it's too shameful." Tomono Sasuke's recalled his lewd appearance just now, and his face was filled with shame and resentment. "I didn't set it up. It was your Shen. He said I might use this function of yours sooner or later. I didn't expect it to come in handy now." Ji Yuhan smiled faintly, then said, "I'm going to seal off this place soon, and at the same time, all the internet will be cut off. You should leave as well." Ji Yuhan glanced at Tomono Kakaze and said, "You're letting me go just like that?" Tomono Kakaze looked at Guhan doubtfully. "Aren't you going to take back the authority you just gave me?" "No need. I believe you won't do anything bad to humans. After all, we are friends. This can also be considered as my final gift to you," Ji Yuhan said with a smile. "Damn, what last gift? Don't think you can get rid of me with just one gift. You still have to buy me many, many gifts in the future." Tomono Kakaze suddenly felt her eyes were a little sore. She immediately turned around and slipped out of the computer screen. She already felt that Guhan might not come back. This might be the last chance for her to see Guhan. Actually, Guhan has many ways to make people leave. There's no need for me to control the computer. Could it be that Guhan just wants to see me for the last time and say goodbye to me? This thought suddenly flashed in Tomono Kakaze's mind. Her feelings for Guhan suddenly surged out like a tide. Just as she was about to go back and have a good talk with Guhan, she realized that the network of the dimensional rift had been completely blocked. This was a physical blockade, and Tomono Kakaze could not enter. This little fool. If I get out alive, will she still have a chance to harm the human world? And if I can't get out alive, will the human world continue to exist peacefully? Just live the rest of your days happily and wait for the future that I don't know. Guhan let out a long sigh and disappeared from the manager's office. He returned to the Black Tortoise's room and walked into the pitch-black passage without looking back. On July 2, 3058 AD, the gate of the dimensional rift of the Radiance amusement park, which was famous throughout Huaxia City and was also the only place in Huaxia City that could coexist peacefully with Yuan-Ku, experienced a dimensional collapse. The entire dimensional rift disappeared without a trace and never appeared again. Chapter 1587. This is. As Guhan walked down the secret passage in Jiyu Xuanwu's room, he finally landed in a secret room that was piled up with stones. At the same time, he discovered an open black hole in the middle of the secret room that was emitting black ripples. Is this the smell of the seamless corridor? As soon as Guhan saw this black hole, he smelled a familiar scent. That's right, this was the seamless corridor that had trapped Guhan for a long time, and this was the other entrance to the seamless corridor. It was also the entrance that Yi Qingping and Misaka Mikoto and the others used to enter the seamless corridor. It was right here. But wasn't the seamless corridor destroyed? How could this entrance still exist? The audience might have such questions in their hearts, but Guhan seemed to have already predicted the existence of the seamless corridor. Without any hesitation, Guhan once again jumped into the entrance of the endless corridor. After more than 30 years, Guhan finally stepped into the seamless corridor once more. And when Guhan arrived at the seamless corridor, he discovered that it seemed to be the same as before. Space-time was still inverted, and there was no sense of time and place, and there were still people who were confused and unable to leave this place. But the current frigid Han was no longer the frigid Han of 30 years ago. 30 years ago, the frigid Han was only able to allow the space-time here to do whatever it wanted to him, but the current frigid Han was able to control the entire seamless corridor. Since the things that were sealed no longer exist, let's return to normal. Guhan snapped his fingers in the seamless corridor, and the entire seamless corridor suddenly trembled. This tremor was extremely small, so small that most of the sealed beings in the seamless corridor did not even notice the existence of this tremor. An hour later, just as they were preparing to face yet another space-time distortion, they discovered, to their astonishment, that the seamless corridor was still in its original state. The chaotic space-time distortions had disappeared, and time no longer had to follow the hourly cycle. Instead, it was like a normal river, quietly flowing forward. And the culprit who caused all of this was naturally our comrade Guhan. At this moment, Guhan was leisurely walking along the corridor. He walked along this endless corridor without stopping for even a moment. Along the way, they met many panic-stricken Yuan-Ku. Guhan had seen some of these Yuan-Ku before, such as Senior Hong Qigong. There were also some that Guhan had never met before. However, these people and Yuan-Ku didn't stop Guhan's footsteps. He kept moving forward without stopping. The others didn't even notice Guhan's existence. It was as if Guhan didn't exist in their eyes. At a certain moment, Guhan suddenly came to a halt and looked at a person who appeared before him. Hello. Where is this place? Why am I here all of a sudden? The person also saw Guhan and immediately ran over excitedly, asking Guhan anxiously and puzzledly. This is the seamless corridor, a place where space and time are in disorder. Guhan had a faint smile on his face as he explained the original rules of the seamless corridor to the person. Thank you. So this is such a place. It seems that I, Ming Yuan, won't be able to get out this time. After listening to Guhan's explanation, the woman first thanked Guhan, then said helplessly. In her opinion, she probably didn't have the ability to leave this strange place. It's okay. You won't stay here for too long. You'll be able to get out soon. I can promise you that. Guhan shook his head. Is that so? Then thank you for your auspicious words. Mingyuan Jendi obviously took Guhan's words as comforting words, so she gave a perfunctory thank you. No need to thank me. I should be the one thanking you. Guhan took a deep look at Mingyuan Jendi, and his mouth moved slightly, as if he wanted to remind Mingyuan Jendi not to touch any black crystal stone. But in the end, Guhan swallowed the words back into his mouth. Thank me for what? I didn't do anything good for you. Mingyuan Jendi asked in surprise. Nothing much. I just know that after seeing you, I've pretty much reached the end of my path. Ji Yuhan smiled. However, the Ming Iris Sword Emperor was confused by Ji Yuhan's words. Just as Mingyuan Zhendi was about to ask for clarification, Guhan had already disappeared in front of Mingyuan Zhendi. Damn! Time and space have been transformed. Seeing Guhan disappear, Mingyuan Zhendi thought that the time and space transformation that Guhan mentioned had happened. After cursing, she aimlessly set off on the road ahead. But just as Guhan said, when Guhan saw Mingyuan Zhendi, this road was almost at the end. After more than 20 minutes, the seamless corridor, which was originally shrouded in nothingness, suddenly appeared a somewhat faint halo of light. And as Guhan continued to step forward, the halo of this halo of light became bigger and bigger, finally forming a rather spectacular door, and this door was open without any scruples, showing the world full of light behind the door. It seemed that this world of the seamless corridor was actually a world with an end, but no one had the ability to reach this end. "I'm coming," Guhan said lightly, and then stepped into the door without hesitation. Crash! The world in front of Guhan instantly changed. The originally dark, terrifying, suffocating and despairing world of the seamless corridor had completely disappeared. In its place was a beautiful world with birdsong and fragrant flowers, with a blue sky, emerald green trees, colorful flowers, crisp and melodious birdsong, and a magnificent waterfall. Flower Fruit Mountain. At the same time, Guhan also noticed that on a boulder at the entrance, the words Flower Fruit Mountain were written in rather neat calligraphy. Could it be that this was the legendary birthplace of the Monkey King, Sun Wukong? The legendary Flower Fruit Mountain that existed only in legends? "Since I'm here, your destiny can also end." When Guhan saw the words Flower Fruit Mountain, his body involuntarily trembled. Then, he turned his body and pointed his finger at the seamless corridor behind him. The seamless corridor, which had originally returned to normal, instantly shattered into pieces like broken glass. In the blink of an eye, it completely disintegrated, and finally, an endless dimensional space appeared outside the door. The seamless corridor, this huge corridor that had appeared since the beginning of the apocalypse, had been used to seal Grandmaster Tongtian. In the end, it had actually been destroyed by Guhan's own hands. This was probably something that Guhan had never imagined when he first left the seamless corridor. But Guhan had no choice. He had to destroy this corridor. Chapter 1588. Following the rugged mountain path all the way up, there were lush trees on both sides of the road. Among them, there was no lack of pink cherry blossom trees. Cherry blossoms fell from the trees one by one and finally fell on Ji Yuhan's shoulders, displaying an exceptional beauty. There were also golden monkeys swinging on the branches, chirping at Guhan. Some of them even slapped Guhan's buttocks. If it were not for the fact that Guhan looked very imposing and not easy to bully, the monkeys would have probably ridden on Guhan's head to cause trouble. Apart from that, butterflies that couldn't be named, but looked bright and beautiful began to dance around Ji Yuhan. A pure white hare quietly peeked out from the forest with a pair of red eyes, looking at Ji Yuhan, this human who suddenly appeared in this world, with some fear. Finally, there was a swarm of wild bees flying around, also staring at this uninvited guest with vigilance. Although the atmosphere in the forest didn't seem friendly, there was no doubt that this was a beautiful place. The Flower Fruit Mountain was a beautiful place. If this place was really without an owner, then Ji Yuhan would be very happy to build his family in this beautiful place that made people feel relaxed and happy. Unfortunately, the mountain already had an owner. When Guhan reached the mountainside, he saw a wooden house made of pure wood. It was located on a flat piece of land on the mountainside. The house was not big, but it was not small either. It had a courtyard with 3 entrances and 2 exits, and there were 8 houses arranged in an orderly manner. Upon closer inspection, the houses were actually arranged according to the position of the 8 trigrams formation. It was obviously a house built by an extraordinary person. From the outside, the house looked a little deserted. The only sign of life was a big yellow cow tied to a pen outside the house. It was nibbling on the grass in the stone trough happily, snorting loudly from time to time. On the door of the house, there were no couplets pasted on it like traditional houses. However, there was a large banner pasted on the lintel of the door. It read, "Fleeting time and dogs are not allowed in." This fleeting time should be from the Lionian family. Could it be that the Lionian family had come to this mountain of flowers and fruits and interacted with the owner of this house? Although Guhan had a close relationship with the Lionian family, Guhan's surname was not Lionian. So, Guhan pushed open the door and walked into the house. Just like the elegant scene outside, the interior of the house was decorated in a classical Chinese style. There were all kinds of simple furniture made of wood. There were no signs of modernization. It was as if this was just an ancient Chinese farm. The only difference was that there were no farming tools in the house. This was obviously impossible for a farmer, but it also meant that the owner of the house was not a real farmer, but a hermit. At this moment, a melodious humming sound suddenly came from the innermost room. This sound was so familiar that the moment Ji Yuhan heard it, his entire body could not help but soften. His legs seemed to be unable to support his own strength, and he slammed heavily into the wall behind him. Who is it? Who is shameless enough to appear in this old man's house? Is it those bastards from the Lionian family who have forgotten their ancestors? A cold scolding sound came from the house, and then a figure appeared in front of Ji Yuhan like a gust of wind. He raised his hand and directly slapped Ji Yuhan's face. Well done. Although he had been slapped, Ji Yuhan did not show any anger. Instead, his face was full of shame as he spoke. This voice is. After hearing Ji Yuhan's voice, the person who slapped him instantly recognized him. Tears immediately filled her eyes. After seeing the appearance of the person, the woman was so excited that she felt dizzy. Just like Ji Yuhan, her body fell backward powerlessly. When she was about to fall to the ground, Ji Yuhan quickly caught her and held her in his arms. Daddy, is that you? Daddy, is Black Tortoise dreaming? Black Tortoise actually saw Daddy. Ji Xuanwu spoke in a daze as she felt Guhan's warmth. Her eyes were completely obscured by her tears as she stared at Guhan's unkempt face. Even though Guhan's beard was unkempt, his face was dirty, and he was dressed like a vagabond, Mingyuan Jendi did not recognize Guhan's appearance when he met Guhan again in the future. It could be said that unless one was close to Guhan, one would not be able to recognize Guhan's appearance. At this moment, to be able to recognize Ji Yuhan's appearance with a single glance, and at the same time, to call out the word father in a daze, other than Ji Yuhan's missing biological daughter, Ji Xianwu, there was absolutely no one else. Daddy, is it really you? Are you really my daddy? Although she recognized Guhan, Ji Xuanwu still found it hard to believe as she asked over and over again. That's right, it's Daddy, I am Guhan. Good daughter, Daddy has finally found you. Guhan could not help but cry. Turbid tears also filled Guhan's eyes. After so many years, Guhan finally saw his own daughter. Daddy. Ji Xuanwu finally confirmed that the person in front of her was her own father. She finally let down all her guard and threw herself into Guhan's arms. She hugged Guhan and cried bitterly. Her cries were tragic, and the sadness contained within was so strong that all the animals in Flower and Fruit Mountain stopped moving at this moment. They silently lowered their heads and sobbed softly. The pain of missing her was so great that it reached this point. This pair of father and daughter who had not seen each other for dozens of years cried for an hour. Only when the tears of the two of them almost stopped did Ji Xuanwu shyly stand up from Guhan's arms. She began to busy herself inside and outside the house. Very quickly, she tidied up a room that had obviously not been used for a long time. She even brewed a pot of fragrant tea. After the two of them sat down, she filled Guhan's cup to the brim before respectfully raising it in front of Guhan and saying, "Lord Father above, daughter invites father to have tea." Good. 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 Guhan said the word good 3 times before receiving the cup of tea with trembling hands. After carefully tasting it, he drank the entire cup in one gulp and finally sighed, "Good tea. Daddy, how did you find this place?" Ji Xuanwu asked while wiping the tears from the corner of her eyes. Daddy is about to fight the last evil thief. Whether I succeed or lose, everything is decided by the heavens. Father cannot force it. But before this battle, father only has one wish, and that is to be able to see you once. But father does not know where you are, so I can only go to your room to take a look. I didn't expect to find the entrance to the seamless corridor. Father has come to this seamless corridor once before. It is also a place filled with memories. It is also the place where you were born. So Father wanted to fulfill the wish that I could not fulfill the last time I came to the seamless corridor. I wanted to walk to the end of the seamless corridor and take a look. But I didn't expect that when I reached the end, I would actually see you, Guhan said with great emotion. Chapter 1589. Who is it? Who's here? Did a rat come in? Before Guhan could ask anything, he suddenly heard an incomparably old voice behind him. Then, the door of the room was slowly pushed open, and a figure entered. Her appearance once again shocked Guhan. Artoria. Guhan stood up from the chair. He never expected that after more than 30 years, Artoria would appear in front of him again. Mom, why are you up? Didn't I tell you to continue resting? Jiyu Xuanwu held Artoria in his arms, and at the same time, pulled her in front of Guhan excitedly. Mom! Look who's here. Who's back? Who is this? Do we know each other? I don't know him. Unexpectedly, Artoria carefully looked at Guhan for a while, and finally shook her head inexplicably, indicating that she had never seen Guhan before, nor did she know who Guhan was. This caused Guhan to look as if he had lost his soul. Dad, it's not like that. Mom is sick. Her brain has suffered a very serious injury. It's like she has dementia. She just forgot about you. Seeing this scene, Jiyu Xuanwu could only helplessly explain. At this time, Guhan also discovered that although Artoria's appearance and aura were exactly the same, it was indeed Artoria from back then. But her mental temperament was completely different. Her eyes were lifeless, and her facial muscles were loose. At the same time, her body would tremble uncontrollably. It was indeed the symptoms of dementia. It's good that she's not a rat. It's good that she's not a rat. Daughter, I'm tired, I'm going back to rest. Help me. Artoria said blankly. Jiyu Xuanwu made a helpless expression at Guhan, and then sent his mother out of the room. After a long time, he returned with a tired expression. I'm sorry. Father. I didn't take good care of Mom. It's all my fault. Seeing Guhan sitting there in a daze, Jiyu Xuanwu suddenly could not hold back his tears, and began to wail unbridledly. What's going on? Can you tell Daddy everything from the beginning to the end? Including why are you here? Why is your mother here? After a long sigh, Guhan said helplessly. Jiyu Xuanwu nodded his head and told Guhan everything that had happened over the years. Over 1,000 years ago. I was pushed into the gate of eternity by that enemy. Jiyu Xuanwu slowly said. It was 52 years ago. To be precise, it's 52 years, 3 months, and 2 days. Jiyu Xuanwu's words were interrupted by Guhan. I'm sorry. My time is a little messed up. So it's already past that day? So the gate of eternity has already been open for more than 50 years. Jiyu Xuanwu revealed a bitter expression before explaining once more. In 52 years, 3 months, and 2 days, after I was pushed into the door of eternity, I discovered that I had arrived on the day when the great calamity had just begun. I personally witnessed the scene of a large number of innocent humans being slaughtered wantonly by the Yuan bandits who had suddenly appeared. At that time, I worked hard to kill many Yuan Ku, but I was still too weak at that time. I only had the strength of a famed sword-level sword wielder, and was unable to fight against so many Yuan Ku. In the end, I was severely injured, and could only flee. Unknowingly, I escaped to the city of Wuhan, and happened to see the words Honest Man's Supermarket, and also the scene of that enemy climbing out of the ruins. So I immediately unsheathed my sword, wanting to kill the culprit who caused me and father to be separated. But that enemy was ultimately still Kunzu, and wanted to kill him on the spot. In the end, the sword in his hand, which is father's Qingpin sword, was suddenly released, and fought with me. I was completely not his opponent, and was defeated by him. Oh right. Qingpin sword. Qingpin sword. Speaking till here, Jiyu Xuanwu suddenly thought of something, and immediately rushed to Guhan anxiously. Father, is that Qingpin sword still in your hands? You can't bring it along anymore. You have to throw it away immediately. She is Tongtian sect leader's sword. She is a chess piece that Tongtian sect leader used to plot against you and that enemy, father. Father. That sword is too dangerous. You have to destroy it immediately. If you don't have the heart to do it, then leave it to your daughter. Your daughter will never let this sword harm father again, Jiyu Xuanwu said anxiously, and at the same time, her eyes wandered around Guhan's body, wanting to pull out that Qingping sword. No need. You are a step too late. That sword has already pierced into my heart. Guhan sighed, and calmed down the anxious Jiyu Xuanwu, and said with some grief, that sword is gone, Qingping is gone, Qingping is also gone. All gone, only a scrap of iron is left. Father. Jiyu Xuanwu looked at Guhan blankly. She seemed to have never seen Guhan so sad, and had such a sorrowful expression. In her impression, her father had always been a man of indomitable spirit, a man who would not feel sad for anything. Unexpectedly, at this moment, she saw this side of her father. It seemed that the Qingping sword was really completely destroyed. Father, you don't have to be sad, this is all fate. I was also tricked by that sword into this state. Jiyu Xuanwu sighed, and continued to narrate her story. Now that I think about it, if I had been a bit more unyielding, I would have killed that enemy, and there wouldn't have been so many things afterwards. But as luck would have it, I actually walked together with him, and even had feelings for him, got married, and even had a child that belonged to the two of us. Speaking to this point, Jiyu Xuanwu's expression suddenly became a bit shy, and looked at Guhan with some fear. Father, this daughter did not get your consent. Even if I gave myself to someone else, father, you won't be angry with this daughter, right? Why are you mentioning this? Guhan smiled bitterly. If you want my consent, then wouldn't you have to wait for another 1,000 years? How could I let you suffer like this? Moreover, love is a matter between two people. As a parent, I can give my opinion, but I will not stop the two of you from loving each other. Since the two of you walked together because of love, then be together. It's just that fleeting calendar became my master for a period of time. Now that I think about it, letting my son-in-law become my master, isn't this a bit too embarrassing? Me. This bastard, he actually has the face to become his father-in-law's master. Hearing Guhan say this, Jiyu Xuanwu immediately frowned, but the love between her brows for fleeting calendar could not be concealed no matter what. Chapter 1590. After this small incident, Jiyu Xuanwu continued to narrate his story. Jiyu Xuanwu continued, later, as Yangjing City began to break ground, I realized that the fleeting calendar started to become very strange. He would often disappear in front of me and do some things behind my back. He would also always ask about a place called the Seamless Corridor. It was as if this place was extremely important to him. Later, I remembered that this seamless corridor was the place that father always talked about, the place where mother disappeared and was controlled by the martyr's palace. Thinking of these things, I instinctively became very curious about this seamless corridor. At that time, after countless battles with Yuan Ku, I had already grown to the level of an emperor sword wielder. I was very confident in my own strength and felt that the world was big enough for me to go to. At that time, the martyr's palace hadn't been built yet, and the seamless corridor was still an ownerless place in the dimensional space. Thus, after a long period of preparation, I was prepared to go to the seamless corridor and see what kind of thing it was and what kind of secrets it was hiding, but I shouldn't have told my enemy about this the day before I left. Originally, when I realized that he was also asking about the seamless corridor, I didn't plan on telling him about it. I only told him that I was going to travel for a period of time. But when he heard that I was going to travel, he brought out a table full of good wine and said that he was going to send me off. At that time, our relationship as a married couple was at its strongest, so I didn't feel that anything was wrong, so I accompanied him to drink for the whole night. After drinking too much, he kept asking me about my true purpose in going out. I couldn't help but tell him that I was going to the seamless corridor because I had bought two of my best friend. After that, I fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up, I found myself lying in the wilderness, surrounded by trees and Yuan Ku. What was even more frightening was that all of my sword maidens had disappeared, not even an ancient sword. I immediately realized that I had been plotted against by the person closest to me. But perhaps he couldn't bear to kill me himself, so he took away all of my sword maidens and wanted Yuan Ku to kill me. Near the place where I fell asleep was the land of a Hong-level Yuan Ku. Without the sword maidens, I definitely wasn't a match for this Hong-level Yuan Ku. At that time, I was still pregnant with his flesh and blood, yet he still wanted to kill me. In the end, that Hong-level Yuan Ku naturally discovered my existence and attacked me without hesitation. Without the sword maidens, when I was about to die in the hands of that Yuan Ku, my sworn brother, or rather, one of the ancestors of the human race, Qin Shi Huang Ying Zheng, happened to appear. But at that time, Ying Zheng only had the battle prowess of a sword immortal. The two of us had to join forces to barely escape from the hands of that flood-level bandit, and I was severely injured. If it weren't for the medical pods in my dimensional pocket that I brought over from the future, I would have definitely died at the hands of that flood-level bandit. After recovering, in order to still have a certain amount of combat power, I found an ordinary natural sword maiden. Although I couldn't synchronize them, at least I could use the sword essence, which could barely be considered as the power of an immortal sword. After that, I tried my best to figure out one thing. I wanted to figure out why the person I once loved wanted to kill me. So, I pretended that I was already dead, and secretly investigated the truth behind the matter while I was pregnant. That was really an unforgettable period of time. Father, you don't know how bitter and sad I was at that time. I even wanted to pierce my belly with a sword and die together with that bastard's son, but in the end, I still endured it, gave birth to the child, and then took the child with me to search. Finally, my hard work paid off. I met some Yuenko who did not take the initiative to attack human beings. I found that the reason why they did not take the initiative to attack human beings was that they did not have a weird existence similar to a spiritual fragment in their bodies. Therefore, I realized that this was the prototype of the filth that Father mentioned. It was actually a spiritual fragment. So I realized that the root cause of the change in my lover was this filth. So I spent the next years desperately studying this filth, and even studied how to remove the filth from the body of an ordinary Yuan Ku, but I still couldn't find the filth. In the end, I decided to take a risk and send a piece of filth into my own soul, and use my own soul to analyze the memories contained in this spiritual fragment, hoping to find out the origin of the original owner of the filth through this method. It was a huge risk. Even a small piece of spiritual fragment contained a shockingly powerful soul power. It almost devoured my entire soul. But in the end, I succeeded in absorbing this piece of filth and read all the memories contained in it. Only then did I know the truth about the Great Apocalypse. It turned out that it was sect leader Tongtian and a group of sages who were behind it. The battle of these sages not only destroyed their world, but also destroyed the barrier between dimensions, allowing creatures from different dimensions to enter the main world. After the spiritual fragment of sect leader Tongtian's shattered spiritual consciousness entered the bodies of these Yuan Ku, becoming the source of filth that polluted them. This is the origin of everything. When telling the truth, Jiyu Xuanwu told Guhan in a tone as if he was presenting a treasure. However, to Jiyu Xuanwu's disappointment, Guhan's indifferent expression told him that Guhan actually already knew the truth of the matter. He also knew about the existence of sect leader Tongtian. That's right. Now that Father knows the origin of the Qingping sword and has been hurt by it, he should know more or less about sect leader Tongtian. Jiyu Xuanwu smiled bitterly and gave up on presenting a treasure. Then, he continued, so I began to desperately search for information about sect leader Tongtian, and even saved some Yuan Ku of the heavenly court. I dug out a lot of secrets from their mouths, and finally pieced together the truth of the matter. I also learned that the sword in the enemy's hand was sect leader Tongtian's most intimate and favorite sword, the Qingping sword. Chapter 1591. At this time, I finally understood why that enemy treated me like this. It was because he had been bewitched by the Qingping sword and lost his own conscience. He became a tool for the Qingping sword to resurrect the sect leader of Tongtian. After knowing the cause and effect, I felt that I couldn't let things continue like this. I had to stop the Qingping sword's actions. Thus, I brought my child back and confronted that enemy again. At the same time, I hoped that I could use this opportunity to break the Qingping sword. At the same time, I hoped that my enemy could use this opportunity to regain his consciousness. Jiyu Xuanwu's voice suddenly became a little more excited as he spoke. What happened in the end? Guhan also asked very nervously. What else could the result be? Daughter overestimated her own strength. That enemy had already been controlled by the Qingping sword to an extremely deep degree. He actually wanted to personally kill daughter and even stabbed the Qingping sword into daughter's chest. Just as daughter was about to die at the hands of that enemy, who would have thought that my child would save my life? He called out father and woke that enemy up from his daze. Only then did he hurriedly retract his sword and save my life. Jiyu Xuanwu sighed and said. However, after that enemy woke up, he told me that he was only temporarily free from the shackles of the Qingping sword. He could be trapped by the Qingping sword again at any time. Thus, he told me to recuperate at home while he went to find a place to seal the Qingping sword. At that time, I was severely injured and couldn't stop him at all. I could only watch him leave with Qingping. After about 10 days, that enemy returned empty-handed. The Qingping sword was indeed sealed by him. Later, I remembered that he should have sealed the Qingping sword in Yuzhong City at that time. In the end, who knew how many years later, it became the opportunity for my father to meet the Qingping sword. However, I never expected that after the seal came back, I didn't know if that enemy had fallen for the Qingping sword's plot or if his mind had been controlled again. After he came back, he threw his severely injured daughter out and used the lives of his daughter and child to force his daughter to never return to the human world. She had to hide forever and never come into contact with humans again. At the same time, he began to frantically destroy all traces and memories of his daughter's existence in that world, even going as far as to activate the cultural apocalypse to completely erase all traces of his daughter. Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that the great cultural destruction that father often talks about, the descendants of the future sigh with regret, and the human race almost losing all of their culture and history, was actually caused by me. If only I had listened to father and stayed in the castle obediently instead of coming to this underground world. Then, I wouldn't have so many terrible memories that I don't want to recall. This bastard. He actually dared to do this to my daughter. I will definitely destroy all of his sword souls, so that not a single trace of him will be left in this world. When Guhan heard his daughter's narration, he angrily slammed the table and said, "Not only that, he even brainwashed my child who isn't even 3 years old, making that child believe that his mother is a bad person whose existence must be erased. Your daughter really hates him to death. I can't wait to kill him with my own hands, but your daughter can't do it. Your daughter really can't do it." Jiyu Xuanwu suddenly threw himself into Guhan's arms and wailed. He wantonly poured out his sorrowful tears in his father's arms. These were tears that had condensed over thousands of years. After comforting Jiyu Xuanwu for a while, when Jiyu Xuanwu's emotions had calmed down, Guhan continued to ask, "Then what happened? How did you run to the end of this seamless corridor?" Then, Jiyu Xuanwu smiled bitterly, "I won't hide it from father. Afterwards, your daughter felt disheartened and wanted to take the initiative to seek death. So I found my sworn brother Ying Zheng, and wanted to borrow his coffin to bury myself alive. However, I never expected that after staying in his coffin for 2 years without eating or drinking, I would still be alive and kicking. There was no sign of death at all. It was only at that time that I discovered that not only did I not die, I didn't even have a trace of aging. For the first time, I also felt that I might not die in this lifetime. So for the next few decades, I lived in seclusion at the top of Kunlun Mountain. If I met humans, I would knock them unconscious and send them out. If I met Yuan Ku, I would directly kill them. Later, I even left my lifetime's comprehension on a rock at the top of the mountain. At that time, those humans who were knocked unconscious and sent out by me thought that I was a Yuan Ku called the 9 Heavens Mysterious Fairy. So your daughter decided to make the best of the mistake, and in the name of the 9 Heavens Mysterious Fairy, I left the 9 Heavens Mysterious Fairy sword technique on a rock." Hearing this, Guhan couldn't help but sigh. The Empyrean Maiden of the 9 Heavens sword technique was actually created by his own daughter. One must know that in order to nurture his disciple Lu Shihua, Ji Yuhan had once planned to obtain the Empyrean Maiden of the Nine Heavens sword technique that was more suitable for Lu Shihua to cultivate. Who would have thought that in the end, it was actually created by his own daughter? What was going on? I lived on Kunlun Mountain for more than 100 years, and discovered that I really wouldn't die, nor would I show any signs of aging. But the days were getting more and more irritable. In the end, I couldn't resist the restlessness in my heart, and decided to travel outside to relieve my boredom. Along the way, your daughter met many people and also encountered many things. Later, when I remembered the matter of Wutang Mountain that father mentioned, I wanted to go there to take a look. I didn't expect to encounter that mystic dragon that was about to destroy Wutang Mountain. I killed that mystic dragon along the way, and I also saved a woman who was clearly just a famed sword rank swordsman, but dared to fight the mystic dragon to the death, and in the end, was burned to ashes by him. Father, can you guess who that woman was? At this point, Jiyu Xuanwu suddenly revealed a playful little girl's attitude. She obediently blinked her eyes and looked at her father as she asked this question coquettishly. It can't be Zhetian Jendi, right? Gu Han's hand suddenly trembled, and he said in an extremely strange tone. Wow. Father, you guessed it so accurately. It really was His Majesty Zhetian Jendi, Jiyu Xuanwu said excitedly. At that time, Zhetian Jendi was as weak as a seedling. She didn't know anything, and she was always curious about everything. Even her swordsmanship was terrible. It was only after I taught her the basic swordsmanship that she gradually became powerful. The 3 most powerful Emperor sword rank swordsmen in human history were my father, my husband, and my disciple. Just thinking about it makes me feel very interested. No. One was your father, one was your husband, and the last one was your mother. Gu Han said with infinite emotion. However, this sentence could only be said in Gu Han's heart. He didn't dare to tell his precious daughter, who was in a state of excitement. Otherwise, his precious daughter would probably break down. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.